Chapter 546. Master. What is the profound yuan-free immortal? In the autumn season, the forests within the Taoist field of the beginningless gradually turned yellow and withered. Guan was instructing an Xin in her cultivation by a small river. The fairy, who appeared unfathomably profound in the eyes of Chen Kuan's sect disciples, was now wearing a face full of distress, unable to grasp Guan's words. And all at once, an Xin felt ashamed. When she had been instructing the Chen Kuan sect disciples, encountering those with dull spiritual root qualifications, she couldn't help feeling somewhat irritated. Yet looking at her master, facing the difficult task of teaching her, he remained composed, and even kept a smile on his face. She felt that her own path was still long. Little did she know, the reason why Guan was smiling was that Li Ya was taking a beating again. While others teamed up to combat the evil demons from the supreme demon realm, he alone was being pursued by a group of evil demons. Even though Li Ya was being chased, he did not lose his verbal edge. Every time he was about to be caught, he would burst forth with even stronger power to break out of the encirclement. He was excited, thinking that he had broken through the limit of his physical body, undergoing a transformation amidst the battle. Guan heard his heart's voice and was even more amused. "Oh, senior brother, your potential is my doing." As Guan thought this, he turned to an Xin and said, "If you can't figure it out, then take your time. It's meaningless to think about other useless matters instead of focusing on enlightenment." Upon hearing this, an Xin nodded earnestly. She stopped her wild thoughts and began to review the previous Tao teachings with concentration. Guan noticed her refocused mind and felt satisfied with her attitude. Besides Li Ya, other old acquaintances were also more or less caught in trouble. In the current times, the scramble for opportunities inevitably involved combat and killing. What Guan was most concerned about, however, was Zhu Shi. Zhu Shi had already stepped into the realm of Taoist Zongzai immortal, his body exuding the aura of reincarnation, clearly having regained his destiny pattern from his previous life as a saint of Shengtian. It's worth mentioning that Zhu Shi did not go to outer heaven for his breakthrough. They were hidden in an ancient secret realm, and his breakthrough had caused quite a stir, covering the entire celestial spirit great world. However, since the supreme demon realm was causing chaos, the various sects did not fully mobilize to investigate the truth. Zhu Shi, who had reached the realm of Taoist Zongzai immortal, was preparing to impact an even higher realm. Profound yuan-free immortal. Guan was curious about the immortal seeker. Although he was a reincarnated being, his cultivation level was not strong in this life. How was he using other forces to help Zhu Shi break through by force? This power reminded Guan of the aura of the god of destruction. The god of destruction was also a god of the celestial court. In Black Profound Emperor's memories, the aura of the god of destruction was different from that of the celestial spirit god, but it was, nonetheless, related to the celestial Tao aura. The power that the immortal seeker borrowed was similar to that of the god of destruction, though there were also differences. Guan sensed carefully and felt that this power might be at the same level as the god of destruction and the celestial spirit god. Compared with the three, none was significantly stronger than the others. Interesting, it seems that there's some cause and effect contradiction within the celestial court itself. While observing the world, Guan repeated his teachings. The content an Xin had already memorized, but the reason he repeated it was that he infused his Tao intent into his voice, allowing the Tao listener to have new realizations with each listening of the same content. And Zin's spiritual root qualification was mediocre, but her comprehension was not bad. For her to have come this far, Guan had expended quite a bit of effort just teaching the Tao. Thankfully, it looked to be worth it. Let's see what kind of existence it is that has allowed the celestial spirit god to hold on until now. Guan looked at an Xin, thinking thus in his heart. In the following autumn, the 9 spirit continent remained relatively calm, but the Taitsong continent and other places around the world suffered even more intense shocks. The supreme demon realm seemed to sense something and became increasingly manic. All over the world, the multitude of living beings felt a sense of oppression. The world isn't really about to end, is it? At dusk, LV stood beside Guan, looking into the distance with him. S.E.A. The Novel Fire. Net ** website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. LV face was full of worry, because he felt an oppressive aura emanating from outside the dojo, causing all things between heaven and earth to tremble. Even the spiritual energy seemed restless and uneasy. The reason he could sense the situation outside the dojo was because Guan specifically allowed him to feel it. To be precise, he allowed everyone inside the dojo to feel it. At such a time, it is necessary to make the people in the dojo aware, so they would cherish what they have. Perhaps it truly might be the end of the world. Guan said softly, alarming LV Xian, who looked at him in fear. LV Xian asked, if that is so, what about us? With Guan's abilities, he could surely escape to outer heaven, so why choose to seclude in the celestial spirit great world? This catastrophe will lead to the annihilation of all beings, followed by the shattering of heaven and earth, and even the universe will collapse. Guan began to describe the future, his voice painting one solemn scene after another in LV Xian's mind, causing his pupils to constrict. After he finished speaking, LV Xian dully asked, why would this happen? Who caused all this? The nature of heaven and earth itself? Or the heavenly Tao? Thousands of years ago, the concept of the heavenly Tao spread throughout the land, making all living beings aware of its existence. In the obscurity, it is the heavenly Tao that controls everything. Destiny, reincarnation all lie within the heavenly Tao. Study the great Tao, follow the heavenly Tao. Perhaps it is the immortal gods that people admire who are dissatisfied with our world, and soon you will see the truth for yourself, Guan said with profound meaning. LV Xian subconsciously asked, how soon is soon? As soon as the words fell, the ground trembled, and a vast oppressive force descended, enveloping all things between heaven and earth. LV Xian was immediately intimidated by this force, his eyes widened, showing an expression of utter disbelief. At this moment, a series of figures appeared out of nowhere behind them. It was an Xian, Shenzhen, and others. They looked toward Guan nervously. The sudden oppressive force was truly frightening, prompting them to instinctively seek out Guan. Guan did not turn around. He looked into the distance and said, take a good look, recognize the true nature of this world. One day, you will have to face such despair on your own. Hearing this, an Xian was about to speak when a thunderous boom shook heaven and earth. Guan waved his sleeve, and a light screen appeared in front of them, reflecting a vast continent. At this moment, the continent was splitting apart, dust rising, with grand momentum. If one looked closely, amidst the spectacular surging tide, tendrils appeared as if something, a giant demon, was about to break through the soil. What is that? Shenzhen couldn't help but ask. No one answered her, and Guan did not explain, but let them continue to watch. As more and more dust arose on the continent, the view on the light screen zoomed out, showing more of the sea areas, while the continent was submerged by the surging waves. Soon, the expressions of an Xian and others began to change, some even with their mouths wide open in shock as if a mortal had seen a ghost. They saw a huge round fruit rising within the mighty surging tide, its surface covered in golden Tao patterns. It was larger than the continent, rising continuously, growing larger and larger. Chen Chuan turned his head to another direction, his eyes wide as he pointed and said in astonishment, look over there, quickly! Everyone turned to look, and saw a gigantic object appearing on the horizon, the same mysterious giant fruit from the light screen. That is the heaven and earth Tao fruit, the essence of heaven and earth itself. Without it, there would be no heaven and earth, nor would there be all things within heaven and earth, Guan introduced. Without waiting for anyone to ask, he continued, someone has reached the level of profound yuan-free immortal, prompting the heaven and earth Tao fruit to appear. Profound yuan-free immortal? Blood Prison Great Saint asked impatiently, Master, what is a profound yuan-free immortal? If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 547. The Sky is Falling. After Nirvana, the stages are Loose Immortal, Wandering Immortal, Celestial and Earthly Immortals, Carefree Primordial Immortal, Divine Immortal of Wondrous Dharma, Tao Void Profound Immortal, Divine Thought True Immortal, and Free Immortal. Guan's voice floated towards everyone, their eyes widened in awe. CTH Novel Ire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Guan, fearing they hadn't understood clearly enough, added, although Taoist Zongzizai Immortal and Profound Yuan-Free Immortal are still considered free immortals, the gap between each level far surpasses the 9 heavens of the immortal path. Once one reaches Taoist Zongzizai Immortal, they will cultivate a Tao fruit, the so-called Tao fruit. At this point, he stopped and turned his head to look towards the mysterious giant fruit on the horizon. Tao fruit. Chen Chuan couldn't help but ask, Master, could this heaven and earth Dao fruit possibly be a cultivator's Dao fruit? The others all looked at Guan, extremely tense, awaiting his answer. Guan replied, yes, the heaven and earth Dao fruit is indeed a cultivator's Dao fruit, and the catastrophe of heaven and earth is brought by the enemies who slew him. Everyone was shocked upon hearing this, turning to look at the heaven and earth Dao fruit that was still growing, feeling more powerless than ever. How many years of cultivation would it take to reach such heights, yet such a being could still be killed? They couldn't fathom what the entity capable of slaying the creator of heaven and earth would be like. But they knew one thing. The sky was falling. Shen Zhen looked at the heaven and earth Dao fruit with a strong urge to paint it down, and she instantly disappeared from the spot. An Exan looked at Guan with a hesitant face and asked, Master, the pressure before the appearance of the heaven and earth Dao fruit. Why do I feel like I've encountered it before? Upon her words, the others looked at an Exan in surprise. Had she also met a profound Yuan-free immortal? Guan glanced at an Exan, his eyes showing a touch of satisfaction. He casually answered, indeed you have. Her name is Zhu Shi, who is also the Saint Heaven reincarnation. Saint Heaven reincarnation. Celestial demon child's eyes lit up with excitement as she asked, is it the Lord of the Holy Court? Hearing Guan affirm with a everyone grew even more excited and began to discuss the legend of Saint Heaven. Guan said no more, vanishing into thin air, leaving the rest of the experience for them to feel for themselves. As the heaven and earth Dao fruit emerged, all sects across the world were alarmed, and one great cultivator after another flew towards the heaven and earth Dao fruit. Even Li Ye rode the 9 extremes sacred heart sword there. From afar, he looked at the heaven and earth Dao fruit, incapable of reflecting the whole fruit in his pupils, while divine exotic immortal spirit stood on his shoulder, equally showing a face of disbelief. What is that? Divine exotic immortal spirit asked with a trembling voice, witnessing the heaven and earth Dao fruit and instinctively feeling fear. The enormity of the heaven and earth Dao fruit shook all living beings' sight, and in the face of such creation, beings only felt reverence, not daring any disrespect. Li Ye also felt the pressure, and his flying speed began to slow. Reason told him that this was not something he could snatch, but another voice in his heart urged him to seize this supreme opportunity. As Li Ye hesitated, figures swept overhead, moving with great speed. Seeing so many fearless individuals, Li Ye felt greater courage welling up inside him. There's strength in numbers. Maybe he would be the one to seize it. Li Ye gritted his teeth and immediately accelerated forward. The enormous and spectacular heaven and earth Dao fruit hovered above the land and vast sea, with Zhu Shi and Immortal Seeker standing at the top of the heaven and earth Dao fruit, looking up into the dazzling starry sky. The celestial Dao light layer that enveloped the celestial spirit great world had become thin, as if it would completely disappear at any moment. Zhu Shi changed into a golden robe that clung to her body, her long hair coiled under a phoenix crown, with 2 golden dragons on her shoulders, and a crimson halo floating behind her. At this moment, she exuded an air of supreme dominance, her brows revealing a chilling disdain for all living beings. Lord of the Holy Court, Shangtian. Profound Yuan-free immortal. The Immortal Seeker looked up and sighed, there are just too many fools who can't see. As his voice fell, a huge black hole appeared in the starry sky above, and blood-red waves of air surged out, writhing like tentacles, horrifying and terrible. Who would have thought that the celestial spirit great world could give birth to the profound Yuan-free immortal during the Shattered Era? An authoritative voice echoed between heaven and earth, so that all creatures could hear. Zhu Shi did not look up, but instead gazed down at the heaven and earth Dao fruit below. Each golden rune glowed with a light unique to it, appearing mysterious. The Immortal Seeker whispered, the Supreme Demon Emperor from the Supreme Demon Realm has arrived. If you want to merge the heaven and earth Dao fruit, you might have to deal with him first. As his voice fell, black holes of various sizes appeared from all directions, terrible auras spilling out from them. Their converging might made heaven and earth tremble. Zhu Shi did not raise her eyes. She simply uttered one word. Good. Boom boom, the palace trembled, and Jiang Qiong, sitting at the highest seat, furrowed her brows. Her gaze turned to the palace doors outside, where the sky was dark, lightning flashed, and thunder roared. Fierce winds ravaged the forests, and in the far distance at the edge of the sky, one could vaguely see a terrifying behemoth. Heaven and earth Dao fruit. Looking at the heaven and earth Dao fruit, Jiang Qiong felt very uneasy. She always had the feeling of facing the apocalypse, as if it was the last day of heaven and earth. At that moment, a female cultivator swiftly flew into the hall, landing before the steps, and saluted Jiang Qiong. "Master, the evil demon has left. It seems to be heading towards the distant mysterious giant fruit. Should we deactivate the sect protection formation?" the female cultivator asked. The mention of the mysterious giant fruit caused her voice to hesitate for a moment. Jiang Qiong glared at her and said, "You feel the malevolence of this heaven and earth. Do you think it should be deactivated?" The female cultivator replied helplessly, "Master, the resources consumed by this formation are truly immense, and continuing like this could easily drag us down. Over the years, you have not allowed us to go out and compete." Her voice trailed off with a hint of resentment. Jiang Qiong responded, "You must have seen other cultivators from sects that joined the struggle. Haven't you noticed a common trait amongst them?" The female cultivator asked in surprise, "What trait?" "They all become mad, bold, even obsessive. Once they set foot on this path, it seems they can never turn back. I'm not sure if my current decision is right, but if the disciples of Gathering Flower sect become like that, then sooner or later, the sect will perish." Jiang Qiong's words plunged the female cultivator into silence. She thought carefully about the faces of those people. They did seem off with a crazed posture. The palace continued to tremble violently, with hot or icy winds blowing in intermittently. Just as the female cultivator was about to leave, a voice full of oppression rang out, "Shengdan, I did indeed underestimate you, but the path you've chosen will surely lead to your doom." The voice of the Supreme Demon Emperor, tinged with fear. Jiang Qiong didn't know who the voice belonged to, but she knew of Shengshan's legend. Demons rampage, and immortal gods fight amongst themselves. Even in the Nirvana realm, facing such a cataclysm, are we any different from mortals? Jiang Qiong's voice was intricate with emotion as she looked at her disciple and said somberly, "In such turbulent times, the best we mortals can do is to hide, not like moths to a flame trying to fight for something. We can't compete for such an opportunity." Search the novel Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 548. The strongest in the world. The shout of the Supreme Demon Emperor made all beings realize the strength of Shengtian. Those ancient legends resurfaced in everyone's minds. Before the changing of the eras, Shengtian was the most powerful existence between heaven and earth and was the supreme ruler, the true sovereign of heaven and earth. Later on, she vanished, and many influential figures emerged in the world, causing her name to be seldom mentioned. What was Shengtian doing? Just how strong was she? Countless creatures gazed at the heaven and earth Tao fruit suspended above the ground, speculating in their hearts. Shengtian had a very positive image, and in front of such terrifying celestial phenomena, the beings who knew of her began to hope that she could save everything. Inside the Taoist field of the beginningless, Guan stayed in his own room, watching the battle. Zhu Shi was absorbing the power of the heaven and earth Tao fruit while resisting the offensive from the supreme demon realm, facing thousands alone, displaying immense strength. That supreme demon emperor was also a profound yuan-free immortal, and even at the same realm, with a group of powerful subordinates assisting him, he was still unable to gain the upper hand over Zhu Shi. At this rate, Zhu Shi would certainly merge with the heaven and earth Tao fruit. Judging by Zhu Zai's performance, Guan felt she was now invincible in the profound yuan-free immortal realm, which was quite exaggerated since she had not only just entered the profound yuan-free immortal realm but had also just broken through from the Taoist Zhongzhizai immortal realm. Even with the borrowed power of the immortal seeker aiding Zhu Shi, her own battle talent was also very strong. Looking across all beings in the celestial spirit great world, judging solely by battle talent, Guan felt that only and how could barely compare to Zhu Shi. Li Ya, LV Xian, Yang Jian, Chen Chuan, and others were far behind. With Gu An's current cultivation level, he had the confidence to make such a judgment, for all beings in the world were within his sight. "Disciple, what would you do?" Guan muttered to himself, referring to An Hao. Under the guidance of the celestial Tao golden core, An Hao also wanted to contend for the heaven and earth Tao fruit. But even with the power of the celestial Tao golden core, he couldn't possibly be Zhu Zai's opponent. The celestial Tao golden core and the heaven and earth Tao fruit both belonged to the same person, but the Tao fruit itself was transformed from the golden core. How this being could retain both Tao fruit and golden core, or what Taoist technique they cultivated, was unknown. Could he possibly nurture 2 golden cores? Guan began to look forward to this being's appearance. All the current struggles were a game between the celestial spirit god and the founder of the celestial spirit great world. All beings were mere pawns. Apart from Guan, the immortal seeker was the only variable. Long Jun from the past did not count. He was no threat to the celestial spirit god. As Guan continued to deduce, the battle between the supreme demon realm and Shangtian intensified, and the world began to feel the effects, with the range getting wider and wider. As the saying goes, when immortals fight, mortals suffer. Even a hint of their unleashed pressure was enough to plunge a region into crisis. Time flew by rapidly. An Xin, celestial demon child, LV Xian, and others couldn't calm down to cultivate. They gathered together, discussing the earth-shaking battle. The screen Guan left behind was reflecting the heaven and earth Tao fruit, which was precisely the battlefield itself. SAR the Novel Fire, net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Looking at the unstoppable Zhu Shi, those who had seen her before were all marveling. They had never imagined that the once timid female disciple would have such a domineering side. It looks like the supreme demon realm can't stop her. She seems to be absorbing the power of the heaven and earth Tao fruit. Goodness, if she successfully absorbs it, will she continue to break through? This Tao fruit is heaven and earth itself. Controlling it would mean controlling the entire world. It's unimaginable. Yes, but don't forget what Master said. All of this is due to the machinations of immortal gods, who have yet to show themselves. Disciples excitedly discussed among themselves. They were amazed by Zhu Shi and the strength of the supreme demon realm, but they weren't panicked. Although they didn't say it outright, everyone felt in their hearts that Guan was the strongest. Even the blood prison great saint, who had seen the end of great heaven and earth, was calm. In his view, even if his master couldn't defeat that being capable of destroying the universe, he had the power to protect himself. As long as his master dared to continue watching the chaos, he wouldn't panic. He even suspected that his master wanted to snatch the heaven and earth Tao fruit. In the blink of an eye, 2 days passed. The battle for the Tao fruit continued. The supreme demon realm had already lost half of its forces, and much of the land had cracked, killing countless beings. Sea waves rolled endlessly into the distance, with many magical treasures and flying creatures following them. Various sects were migrating, and there were imperial dynasties taking their citizens to flee, but during the escape, there was both unity and shady deeds happening. Taitsong continent was far from the heaven and earth Tao fruit. Countless cultivators at the continent's edge were blocking tsunamis. There was no immediate catastrophe, but the hearts of everyone grew increasingly heavy. The longer time dragged on, the more disaster it brought to all beings. That day at noon, another boundless and mighty pressure descended. This pressure didn't make the creatures of heaven and earth feel uncomfortable but instead brought a revitalizing sensation. That golden core has actually found an inheritor. Wait, could it be? The immortal seeker, standing on the heaven and earth Tao fruit, frowned and muttered to himself. Not far away, Zhu Shi continued to absorb the power of the heaven and earth Tao fruit. Looking upward, Zhu Shi was condensing a Dharma aspect even larger than the heaven and earth Tao fruit, with 1,000 arms, each holding different magical treasures. The Dharma aspect was ever-changing and dazzling to behold. Zhu Shi turned her head to look at him and asked, "Could it be what?" The immortal seeker had a complex look in his eyes but simply shook his head slightly, saying nothing. Seeing that he was hiding something from her, a chill flashed in Zhu Zai's eyes, but she said no more. At this point, she had no retreat. In fact, not seeing the celestial spirit god up to this point, Zhu Shi felt something was off. The absence of the celestial spirit god meant that even if her actions were successful, they wouldn't threaten him, which was a frightening prospect. Zhu Shi looked down at the heaven and earth Tao fruit beneath her feet, her gaze attempting to pierce through the golden Tao patterns, to see through the heaven and earth Tao fruit. A dazzling bright light struck from the side, hitting Zhu Zai's face. She glanced over to see a huge sun appearing in the sky, illuminating the entire celestial spirit great world. In an instant, the whole world was enveloped in strong light. The nearby continents and oceans were stripped of color. Boom, 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 out of the massive sun surged waves of fire, forming huge golden dragons larger than mountains, breathing scorching heat. The heaven and earth Tao fruit, and how also desire it. A loud voice like thunder rang through heaven and earth. audible to all creatures. The name and how instantly embedded itself in the memory of all beings. Those who knew him were incredulous, and those who didn't felt tense. Just hearing the voice made one want to submit. Such a powerful being entering the battlefield would surely bring even greater catastrophe to heaven and earth. And how? At Supreme Sect within the Third Medicine Valley, the aged LV Batian sat by his garden, looking up at the bright sun in the sky, mumbling to himself. His turbid eyes gradually brightened. In a trance, it seemed he saw the spirited youth from 9,000 years ago standing in front of him again. I really am old, LV Batian mumbled to himself. But you certainly aren't old yet. Where are you watching all this? Search the novel Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 549. Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable. Supreme Demon Emperor Guan appeared with the Celestial Tao Golden Core, and that magnificent celestial might made the situation in the great heaven and earth even tenser. Zhu Shi did not respond to Guan's forceful shouting. She directly controlled the Dharma aspect to strike at Guan, releasing the profound primordial aura that made the rules of heaven and earth tremble, causing the celestial vault's thunderclouds to churn and change color, with various anomalies emerging one after another. The clash between the Celestial Tao Golden Core and the Heaven and Earth Tao Fruit affected the entire great heaven and earth. This time, there was no retreat for all beings, as the disaster was no longer centered around the Heaven and Earth Tao Fruit spreading outwards, but instead causing the great heaven and earth to crack everywhere, with no pattern to speak of. In front of these two powerful forces, any being wishing to participate in the struggle did not even have the qualification to approach. The 7 subordinates of the Silent Destruction God Emperor were not attracted to the Heaven and Earth Tao Fruit. Instead, they flew towards the outer heaven. After a long time, they flew to the World Gate, and in front of the seated Celestial Spirit God, they bowed respectfully, with a reverent attitude. One of them took out a long command token and said carefully, "Celestial God, we wish to return to our great thousand world." The Celestial Spirit God did not open his eyes, but the World Gate behind him began to tremble, and a strong light burst forth from within, which relieved the 7 individuals, who immediately flew into the World Gate. After their figures disappeared, the World Gate quickly returned to calm, and the strong light inside faded away. A mass of black chi condensed out of thin air next to the Celestial Spirit God, gradually forming a sinister cold face. Celestial God, in this battle, my supreme demon realm has suffered heavy losses. Why have you not taken action yet? The mysterious face asked, its tone perplexed. The Celestial Spirit God slowly opened his eyes, which were brighter than the sun and the moon and also demonstrated celestial might. Seeing him open his eyes, the aura of the mysterious face visibly weakened. I have my own certainty. What you seek is for the supreme demon realm to become an independent great heaven and earth. Even if these demons die out, it doesn't matter. The Celestial Spirit God's tone was categorically strong-willed, causing the mysterious face to frown. The Celestial Spirit God's gaze looked towards the Celestial Spirit Great World, his eyes indifferent, yet seeming to be anticipating something. May I ask, Celestial God, now that the Celestial Tao destiny has dissipated, why don't you simply destroy the Celestial Spirit Great World? Your goal couldn't possibly be that heaven and earth Tao fruit. The mysterious face continued to ask, growing uneasy as the situation progressed. He couldn't quite pinpoint the source of his unease. He understood the Celestial Spirit God. This Celestial God disdained deception and would fulfill promises he made. But he didn't understand what the Celestial Spirit God was thinking. Do you know who created the Celestial Spirit Great World? The Celestial Spirit God asked, his voice devoid of any emotion. The mysterious face answered, I only know of such a creator, unaware of their identity and name. He is the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable, surpassing the free immortal, condensing the golden immortal Tao fruit. The Celestial Court's immortal official recruited him, offering him the Celestial Tao immortal position, life as long as heavenly Tao. The Celestial Spirit God explained. He refused. Thus he met such a fate, and his great thousand world is also not blessed by the heavenly Tao. The mysterious face went silent, pondering the Celestial Spirit God's intent. Was it a warning? Or was it touting the dominance of the Celestial Court? The celestial spirit god turned his head towards the mysterious face, his gaze making the mysterious face's color unnaturally change. Supreme Demon Emperor, you have undergone reincarnation tens of thousands of times, always one step shy of the golden immortal Tao fruit. The shortfall lies in your understanding of the world. Once you create a great world, you will naturally break through. But you must always remember who created everything and who set the order. When the heavenly Tao wishes you to do something, going against the heavenly Tao will mark the beginning of your endless calamity. The tone of the celestial spirit god made the one called Supreme Demon Emperor's expression fluctuate. Meanwhile, the great battle in the human world was still ongoing. Guan, who was manipulating the celestial Tao golden core, had white hair and skin that even started to show bloodstains. Even so, he was still resolutely staring at Zhu Xi. Zhu Xi glanced at him, her eyes revealing a disdainful sneer. She didn't understand what and how was fighting for, but the heaven and earth Tao fruit was a trap in itself. Countless beings went mad for it, reckless with their own lives. The immortal seeker looked at Hao with a peculiar gaze, occasionally glancing back at Zhu Xi. Suddenly, Zhu Xi spoke up. It seems we both consider ourselves the savior, but I am stronger. If I'm not mistaken, what we're facing is not just the celestial spirit god but also the existence who created the celestial spirit great world, your disciple as well. As her words ended, Zhu Xi's eyes turned cold as she looked toward the immortal seeker. The immortal seeker had sought her out under the pretext of helping his disciple seek revenge. Now that his disciple was not entirely dead, their trust was naturally crumbling. Search *the Nell Fire. NT website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. The immortal seeker sighed. I failed to see through him. I didn't expect him to hide so deeply. However, what comes next is a good thing for you. You won't have to face the celestial spirit god alone. Zhu Xi lifted her right hand, and the thousand-handed Dharma aspect above her changed gestures, the various magical treasures blazing with dazzling light. And Hao, suspended in front of the celestial Tao golden core, suddenly had his pupils constrict. The world in front of him changed abruptly, and he found himself in a barren land with no bounds. There was no sky above, only a brilliant starscape, and Zhu Xi's Dharma aspect loomed even larger above him, looking down. And Hao frowned. Behind him, more waves of fire surged from the celestial Tao golden core, quickly pulling him into it. One of us will be possessed by him, and even though you are also a disciple of Master, his favorite disciple, I won't give up on myself. Zhu Xi's voice echoed beneath the starry void, filled with an oppressive force. Within the celestial Tao golden core, an eye appeared, occupying the entirety of it, bearing a resemblance to Hao's eyes, yet different. Meanwhile, in reality, the celestial Tao golden core collided with Zhu Xi's Dharma aspect, scattering it before landing on the heaven and earth Tao fruit, while Zhu Xi and the immortal seeker had vanished without a trace. From a cosmic perspective, the celestial spirit great world burst into a wave of shock force, spreading extravagantly through the universe. The layers of celestial Tao light completely dissipated, and the beings fleeing to outer heaven were eradicated by the shock, utterly annihilated. The evil demons assaulting the heaven and earth Tao fruit from the supreme demon realm were wiped out. In contrast, the cultivators from the human world remained unharmed. Elsewhere, in front of the world gate, the celestial spirit god slowly rose to his feet. Just as the supreme demon emperor was about to speak, he sharply turned his head, showing a look of shock. This aura! How is it possible? Is he really still alive? Exclaimed the supreme demon emperor. The celestial spirit god raised his right hand, and a giant axe appeared in his grip, spiraling with celestial Tao flame. It was the white flame that symbolized absolute order. I have been looking forward to this battle for a long time, forgetting how many years it has been. The voice of the celestial spirit god resounded, his tone becoming excited for the first time, tinged with a trace of fervor. Far away in the Taoist field of the beginningless, Guan suddenly sat up, his expression peculiar, and his eyes filled with surprise. How were and he actually? Guan noticed that Hao's physical body had merged with the heaven and earth Tao fruit, even evolving into a different aura. It felt like the awakening of a past life, yet different. Hao was undoubtedly connected to the founder of the celestial spirit great world, but likely not a reincarnation. While surprised by Hao's transformation, the strength of the celestial spirit god was something neither Hao nor the heaven and earth Tao fruit could contend with. It would ultimately be up to him to make a move. Good. Guan stood up and began to limber up inside the room, forming a stark contrast with the celestial spirit god before the world gate. He was eager to try. The other, invincible to the world. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 550. The Treasures of the Immortal Palace. The collision of the forces between the Heaven and Earth Tao Fruit and the Celestial Tao Golden Core not only made the world tremble but also affected the other great Heaven and Earths within the universe, turning the disaster into a cosmic calamity. The Tao mist in the silent extinction domain surged violently, with pieces of nebulae dispersing and new ones being born. The cosmic beasts hidden in darkness began to flee in all directions, presenting a chaotic scene in the vast, boundless universe. At Supreme Sect, on the mountains at the edge of the Third Medicine Valley, Long Qing, Long Jun, and Candlestar stood side by side, looking towards the bright light on the horizon, their faces barely concealing their shock. Candlestar couldn't help but look at Long Jun and asked, "Senior, can you see through all this?" He could feel a powerful presence awakening in the distance, its momentum increasing at an unimaginable pace. "I cannot see through it either. What is happening now is completely different from the future I foresaw," Long Jun replied, his eyes complex. Long Qing caught a glimpse of Long Jun's expression with his peripheral vision, and sensed the unrest and confusion of this elder. This was the first time he had seen such an expression on his ancestor's face. He looked back towards the horizon, his emotions mixed. "Brother and how?" Zhu Shi. Long Qing murmured these two names in his heart. Both were fellow disciples, and although Zhu Shi was Saint Heaven reincarnated, they had this connection. How could he not be affected? Wuxia world. Sight he realized he truly wasn't the master's most favored disciple. And how in Zhu Shi had already been able to dominate the trends of heaven and earth, while he could only hide within Medicine Valley to cultivate his divine skills, which were profound and unfathomable, and how much longer it would take to master them was unknown. All living beings were enveloped by the bright light, and everything lost its color. Even mortal spirits could feel the oppressive force swiftly strengthening. But miraculously, this didn't extinguish the mortal spirits. From the view of the universe at the center of the celestial spirit great world, there was a mass of strong light, and this light was rising. Within the strong light, two figures were battling, Zhu Shi and An Hao. Zhu Zai's Dharma aspect shrank to 10,000 zhong tall, completely suppressing An Hao, who had turned into a bloodied figure, his physical body occasionally exploding but quickly coalescing again. Both were utilizing the power of heaven and earth, but Zhu Zai's cultivation level was far superior to An Hao's, the gap in strength vast. "You're no match for me, give up." Zhu Shi looked down upon An Hao, her cold voice echoing, her Dharma aspect not ceasing its spell casting. An Hao didn't utter a word, clenching his teeth and persevering, his blood-streaked white hair whipping about as if he were a mad demon. Patterns of gold slowly appeared on his chest, and soon an eye emerged. It was the mysterious giant eye from within the celestial Tao Golden Core. Seeing this eye, Zhu Shi frowned. At that moment, countless light stars burst forth from behind Zhu Shi, hurtling towards An Hao at high speed, and her expression drastically changed. She felt her own power being siphoned away, headed towards An Hao. The divine skills taught by the immortal seeker could prevent her from being devoured by the heaven and earth Tao fruit, but they could not stop the power of the heaven and earth Tao fruit from leaving. "What's going on?" Zhu Shi furrowed her brows tightly, staring intently at An Hao. As the power of the heaven and earth Tao fruit surged into An Hao's body, he rapidly transformed into a blood silkworm, his curled-up body faintly visible. It wasn't just the power of the heaven and earth Tao fruit but also the power of the celestial Tao Golden Core no longer lent to An Hao, but merging inside him in an inexplicable manner. An Hao was transforming into someone else. Meanwhile, Guan, exercising his muscles in secret, was startled by An Hao's fate turning murky, making him hesitant about whether to make a move prematurely. But if he struck prematurely, the master of the great world would still leave behind a hidden danger. If the will of the master of the celestial spirit great world remained and could observe all creatures, that posed a risk for Guan as well. He couldn't let anyone know of his ability to steal lifespans. So he would wait. It was only fair that An Hao should pay a price for his choices, since no one had forced him on this path. Guan saw the celestial spirit god move, holding that familiar massive axe and walking towards the celestial spirit great world. Behind him followed a mass of demonic qi, whose essence was the same as the evil demons of the Supreme Demon Realm, especially similar to that of the Supreme Demon Emperor. With just one glance, Guan saw through its cause and effect. The Supreme Demon Emperor, the ancient being who established the Supreme Demon Realm. The Supreme Demon Emperor was merely his disciple, managing the Supreme Demon Realm on his behalf while he had always hidden in the shadows, unknown to anyone in the Supreme Demon Realm except for the Supreme Demon Emperor. Feeling something, the Supreme Demon Emperor suddenly stopped. The celestial spirit god paid no mind and continued forward, his eyes only on the celestial spirit immortal venerable. He didn't walk fast, still waiting for the celestial spirit immortal venerable to revive. Before long, having lost the power of the heaven and earth Tao fruit, Zhu Zai's cultivation level fell sharply, suddenly dropping to the Taoist Zongzai immortal realm. She couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood, her complexion instantly turning pallid. She looked ahead, and the blood silkworm transformed by Hao had grown over 100,000 zhang tall. His figure had also become enormous, still curling up. A deep breathing sound came from inside the blood silkworm, as if the oldest demon god was about to awaken. "Are you still not leaving?" The voice of the immortal seeker entered Zhu Zai's ears. She turned her head to see the immortal seeker appearing beside her. His body emitted a faint silver light, his robe fluttering slightly, full of immortal energy. "Zhu," she retorted. "Leave? Where do I go? To the world gate?" The immortal seeker sighed. "I underestimated him, perhaps I was also calculated by him. I will help you leave. Your talent should not be buried here." Just as she was about to continue mocking, the immortal seeker's soul emerged from his body and he turned, swinging his hand towards her. His palm was incredibly fast, so fast that even Zhu Shi in the Taoist Zongzai immortal realm couldn't react in time. Struck by the palm wind from afar, Zhu Zai's eyes widened as she fell backward, a silver-white light gate appearing behind her. She fell straight into it, and the light gate abruptly vanished. The flesh of the immortal seeker perished, leaving only his soul floating in the void, his face showing a weary expression. He turned to look at the massive blood silkworm, his gaze complex. "My disciple, why must you also hide from your master? Could it really have been your fault back then?" The immortal seeker muttered to himself. "Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable, you established the Celestial Spirit Great World, and were conferred the Celestial Tao Immortal position by the Celestial Court, yet you refused and even harmed immortal officials, sacrificing all living beings. Now, do you still want to commit crimes?" The voice of the Celestial Spirit God came from the depths of the universe and reached the ears of all beings in the universe. The name Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable made all beings remember. Establish the Celestial Spirit Great World? Sacrifice all living beings? The information in these words struck fear into all beings. Then another voice arose. "What about you, Celestial Spirit God? Without my establishment of the Great Thousand World, where would your godly position come from? You force me to sacrifice all living beings, you keep the Great Thousand World in its shattered state, unable to be repaired by the heavenly Tao. Your actions have already violated the celestial rules. What are you pursuing? Do you think I don't know?" Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable. His voice was similar to Hao's, but more imposing. Listening to their dialogue, the immortal seeker furrowed his brow tightly, seeming to think of something incredible. He looked up at the giant blood silkworm and couldn't help but say, "Back when you followed me to the immortal palace, could you really have stolen that ultimate treasure?" The giant blood silkworm did not make another sound, and the celestial spirit god did not continue the conversation. Though the dialogue had ended, the vast oppressive force of the celestial spirit god was drawing near. Inside the house, Guan, listening to the conversation of the two, grew curious. What was the relationship between the celestial spirit god and celestial spirit immortal venerable, and what were the treasures they mentioned? Boom, accompanied by a heaven-shattering loud noise, the universe trembled as the giant blood silkworm exploded. Blood winds raged in various directions of the universe. A towering figure appeared. It was Hao, but more robust than before. His upper body bare, an eye growing on his chest, a black dragon wrapped around his waist, vicious black chi surged below, encircling him, his white hair wildly flying. That face, identical to Hao's, showed no emotion. He was Hao, and he was also the celestial spirit immortal venerable. Reflected in his eyes was the approaching figure of the celestial spirit god. The two, separated across the universe, locked in a destined conflict with only each other in their sight. "Master, you shouldn't have come. Go back, pretend you know nothing of this. Whether it's him or me, whether alive or dead, do not pursue it further. The voice of the celestial spirit immortal venerable rang out again, seemingly unafraid of others' hearing, his voice still resonant. Chapter 551. Guan versus the Celestial Spirit God. Hearing the words of the celestial spirit immortal venerable, the immortal seeker's expression turned ugly, anger apparent in his eyes. Why have you chosen to be born at this time? The immortal seeker looked up at the figure of the celestial spirit immortal venerable and asked, suppressing his rage, knowing now was not the time for petty calculations. The celestial spirit immortal venerable did not answer but instead turned to gaze toward the celestial spirit great world, his eyes filled with profound meaning. At the same time, a brilliant light appeared from the depths of the universe. It was the figure of the celestial spirit god holding the celestial Tao divine axe, stepping on the Tao rules. Every step he took, ripples spread throughout the cosmic space. Under his steps, the universe seemed ephemeral, ready to vanish at any moment. The celestial spirit immortal venerable turned back, refocusing his gaze on the celestial spirit god. He raised his right hand, palm facing upwards, and gold flame spontaneously appeared and rapidly coalesced into a great cauldron, growing larger continuously until it dwarfed his own form. Above the cauldron, a vortex with stars scattered within, breathtakingly beautiful, resembling the most mystical secret realm, brimming with allure. The moment the cauldron appeared, all beings felt as if their strength was being siphoned away. Countless fell paralyzed to the ground, those flying cultivators and demons crashing into oceans and between mountains. All at once, the celestial spirit great world fell silent. Inside the palace, Jiang Qiong lay weak on the staircase, looking toward the outside of the grand doors, her face revealing a look of despair. Wuxia world. Sight Wuxia world. Sight. She felt her mana and chi power being drawn out in an instant, even her divine sense disappearing without a trace. Her Tao practice accumulated over nearly 10,000 years. How could this be? She couldn't fathom what she was experiencing, and what kind of being was behind this. Suddenly, her peripheral vision caught another pair of feet beside her. Her pupils dilated sharply as she was about to look up. A hand grasped her forearm. Endless mana poured into her, revitalizing her strength rapidly. Feeling this mana, Jiang Qiong didn't need to see the person to instantly let her guard down. She looked up with a smile on her face. It really is you, Jiang Qiong said softly, her expression somewhat infatuated. Guan pulled her to her feet and asked with a smile, do you know why your mana disappeared? Jiang Qiong leaned on him. Why? Because the mana you cultivated and you yourself are creatures of great heaven and earth. For great heaven and earth to reclaim everything from you, it's as easy as turning over one's hand, Guan said with a helpless smile, feeling her body against his. At such a time, this guy was still making his moves. Hearing this, Jiang Qiong frowned, straightened up, and asked, Great heaven and earth? Is great heaven and earth punishing us now? What did we do wrong? That's right, you did nothing wrong. But great heaven and earth is not what you think it is. It's actually a person, or rather a cultivator whose emotions cannot be swayed by those he created like you. Guan's answer shocked Jiang Qiong. Her beautiful eyes widened, speechless. Because the words came from Guan, she believed them. And because she believed, her perception was overthrown. She felt the world was preposterous. While Guan was explaining the truth about great heaven and earth to Jiang Qiong, the celestial spirit god had already arrived before the celestial spirit immortal venerable, no longer smaller in stature than the celestial spirit immortal venerable. Under the presence of the two mighty beings, the celestial spirit great world seemed nothing more than a stepping stone, no longer holding the grandeur and magnificence of great heaven and earth. The celestial spirit god, still holding the celestial Tao divine axe and emitting a strong heavenly light, dazzling to the extreme, looked at the great cauldron in the hands of the celestial spirit immortal venerable and spoke, Purple Chi creation cauldron, being with you has done it a disservice. Today, I hope you will let it show its true strength. The celestial spirit immortal venerable fixated on the celestial spirit god. You have grown stronger. The celestial spirit god lifted the celestial Tao divine axe, pointing at him. After I execute you and destroy your great thousand world, I will shed the identity of the celestial spirit and ascend to an even higher rank among the immortal gods. Had you not ambushed me back then, the outcome would still be in question. As the celestial spirit immortal venerable's voice fell, the purple chi creation cauldron burst forth with a vast chi sea. The silvery stellar sea suddenly expanded, enveloping the entire universe. The aura of the celestial spirit immortal venerable surged relentlessly. He was absorbing the power of all things in the universe, including the powers of those great worlds. The celestial spirit god still did not make a move. The soul of the immortal seeker floated in the distance, his gaze locked on the celestial spirit god. He could tell that the celestial spirit god had utter contempt for the celestial spirit immortal venerable. Has he reached a higher realm? The immortal seeker frowned, feeling uneasy. It was not just him. Even the celestial spirit immortal venerable could feel the disdain from the celestial spirit god. At that moment, within the celestial spirit immortal venerable, inside a dark space, and Hao stood beside the celestial spirit immortal venerable, both gazing ahead. 100 yards away, a screen of light suspended, showing the figure of the celestial spirit god. Looking at the immovable celestial spirit god, the disheveled and Hao felt uneasy. He turned to the celestial spirit immortal venerable and asked, "Are you confident?" The celestial spirit immortal venerable, dressed in a white robe, looked very similar to An Hao, though with a more weathered face. "I can only do my best, and besides, I have no other choice, do I?" The celestial spirit immortal venerable replied, his answer darkening An Hao's expression. The celestial spirit immortal venerable turned to An Hao with a smile. "Don't worry too much. With my abilities, even if I cannot defeat him, helping you to escape to safety is hardly a difficult task." An Hao was not pleased. He asked, "Why do you treat me this way?" He had a suspicion in his heart but dared not voice it. "You guessed right, but also not quite. You can indeed be considered my child, but not in the way you understand birth. You were conceived from my own Tao, and it was my choice to let you be born where you were. As long as you are within my great thousand world, I could even keep you immortal. I have always been watching over you," the celestial spirit immortal venerable continued. Chapter 551. Guan versus the celestial spirit god. _2 And Hao didn't feel shocked. In the thousands of years he had spent comprehending the celestial Tao golden core, he had long sensed that his destiny pattern was extraordinary, which is why he could feel his own mission. He stared at the celestial spirit immortal venerable and asked, "The change of era, was it your active choice, or was it the choice of the heavenly Tao?" If there were no change of era, the celestial Tao light layer weakening, how would the celestial spirit god dare to make a move? In the process of his comprehension of the heavenly Tao, he could feel the suppression of the so-called immortal gods by the heavenly Tao. "That's right, it was my active choice," replied the celestial spirit immortal venerable, his gaze fixed on the celestial spirit god in the light screen. And Hao immediately became anxious and asked, "Why?" "You know I need time to grow. Given time, I would surely be able to help you eradicate the celestial spirit god and aid in your resurrection." He had absolute confidence in his talent. The celestial spirit immortal venerable turned to look at him, his eyes complex, and said, "Child, you truly are my most perfect creation. You make me prouder than the entire great thousand world, but it's not that I don't give you time. It's because there are existences in the world that are even more terrifying than the celestial spirit god." "What existences?" And Hao frowned and asked. Today, the number of powerful beings ravaging the celestial spirit great world were countless, and many names flashed through his mind. At that moment, in reality, the celestial spirit immortal venerable's right hand raised, and the purple chi creation cauldron took flight, spinning, the mouth of the cauldron facing the celestial spirit god. Boom! A majestic force that made the entire universe tremble erupted from the cauldron mouth, and a vast silver blue chi sea burst forth, grand and unstoppable, illuminating the celestial vault of the celestial spirit great world. Wuxia world. Sight countless creatures lying on the ground looked up to see the celestial vault disappear. They saw a silver blue giant river, within which countless stars twinkled. The eyes of all beings were filled with dots of silver blue light. They saw the figures of the celestial spirit god and the celestial spirit immortal venerable, resembling two founding gods, making all creatures feel their own insignificance. Even those in the immortal Tao realm felt nothing but infinite reverence in their hearts at this moment. The divine power of the purple chi creation cauldron fell onto the body of the celestial spirit god, blocked by a layer of white light. How domineering was this silver river, capable of destroying everything. The space it passed through was ripped apart into dark regions, yet even such a powerful force could not shake the figure of the celestial spirit god. "Is this all you can do?" The voice of the celestial spirit god sounded, with a hint of disappointment. Inside the dark space, and Hao witnessed this scene, his brows deeply furrowed. As for what existence I cannot tell you. Now our opponent is him, the celestial spirit god, the real immortal god. The celestial spirit immortal venerable looked ahead as he spoke, his expression returning to indifference. As his voice fell, the purple chi creation cauldron trembled, and from within that silver river emerged numerous silver figures. They swiftly attacked the celestial spirit god, and in the blink of an eye, the number of silver figures reached an exaggerated amount. They quickly surrounded the celestial spirit god, the disparity in their figures immense, like dust surrounding Mount Tai, yet somehow the dust was plentiful enough to completely surround it. Boom! A terrifying axe chi erupted, dispersing millions of silver figures, chopping through the silver river, striking the purple chi creation cauldron, and the mightily purple chi creation cauldron was directly sent flying. The purple chi creation cauldron disappeared into the depths of the universe, and all was once again silent. With just one move, the celestial spirit god had defeated the divine skills of the celestial spirit immortal venerable, even sending his treasure flying. The celestial spirit god maintained the posture of swinging his axe, his right arm turning slightly, swinging his axe again. The celestial spirit immortal venerable immediately raised his palm to defend, a powerful mana bursting forth containing the strength of thousands of great power of heaven and earth, wishing to contend against the celestial spirit god. Boom! A deafening roar resounded in the ears of all beings, and they faintly heard something like the sound of shattering crystal. Facing the attack of the celestial spirit god, the great magical power of the celestial spirit immortal venerable could not hold on, and was directly dispersed. His flesh bore densely packed wounds, gruesomely ghastly. Heaven balancing golden immortal. The immortal seeker floating in the void looked extremely ugly as he struggled to utter these 4 words. The heavily injured celestial spirit immortal venerable furrowed his brows, his gaze towards the celestial spirit god complex. Inside the dark space, the celestial spirit immortal venerable took a deep breath. And how spirit was taught. He hadn't anticipated the disparity between the celestial spirit immortal venerable and the celestial spirit god to be so great. You? And How asked cautiously. He didn't know how to show his concern, because right then, there was nothing he could do. It seems I cannot stop him. I will send you away. Once the celestial spirit great world is extinguished, you and I will have no more karma. Live well for me, and witness an even vaster heaven and earth. The celestial spirit immortal venerable took a deep breath and spoke somberly. Upon hearing this, and How immediately became anxious. He was about to speak when the voice of the celestial spirit god resonated through the dark space. Humph? Trying to escape? Do you really think it's like the old days? Before the words even fell, the celestial spirit god in the light screen swung his axe again. This axe struck not only the immense body of the celestial spirit immortal venerable, but also shattered the light screen and the dark space. Intense light poured in, enveloping How and the celestial spirit immortal venerable. And How was horrified to find himself suppressed by an incredibly strong force, completely unable to move. He could only glance towards the celestial spirit immortal venerable. However, what made him even more desperate was the look of panic that appeared on the face of the celestial spirit immortal venerable. What realm are you exactly? The celestial spirit immortal venerable bit out, equally unable to move. He knew that the celestial spirit god was strong, but he hadn't expected the gap to be so huge. Faced with the celestial spirit god, he had no power to resist. In the midst of the blinding light, the celestial spirit god, just like before, stepped forward, seemingly symbolizing a divine power of destruction, unstoppable. Heaven balancing golden immortal, mid-stage. The voice of the celestial spirit god echoed through the space that was breaking apart, causing the celestial spirit immortal venerable to lose his composure. Chapter 551. Guan versus the Celestial Spirit God. _3 Even after creating the Celestial Spirit Great World, the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable had barely reached the innate Golden Immortal realm, and the heaven-balancing Golden Immortal seemed infinitely distant to him, almost an extravagant wish. However, the Celestial Spirit God had attained it, even surpassing the early stage. In a daze, the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable thought back to when his master had taken him to the Immortal Palace and he saw the Celestial Spirit God. At that time, the Celestial Spirit God was merely his junior, who had appeared in the Immortal Palace because the master of the Immortal Palace had taken notice of his talent. Rising from the mortal world to become the heaven-encompassing free immortal, the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable didn't care about this. In his eyes, even if the talent of the celestial spirit god was extraordinary, it would never surpass his own. In the end, he died at the hands of the celestial spirit god. And now, the celestial spirit god had far surpassed him. Throughout the long years of death, the celestial spirit immortal venerable could sense the presence of the celestial spirit god. The celestial spirit god had never left. Which means, the celestial spirit god had achieved the heaven-balancing golden immortal by meditating and attaining enlightenment on his own. Thinking of this, the celestial spirit immortal venerable's pride was completely shattered. He totally lost his spirit. Senior! Senior! Faint voices reached the celestial spirit immortal venerable's ears, but they could not awaken his fighting spirit. Father! Suddenly, the celestial spirit immortal venerable felt a jolt like thunder awakening him. He instinctively turned his head and saw Enhao looking at him, his face fierce. Father! Since you are my father, you cannot just surrender. Even if you die, you must die fighting. Enhao gritted his teeth and roared, struggling to speak as he was unable to move. Sir, the novel Fire. Net ** website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. He could accept defeat, he could accept death, but he could not accept the celestial spirit immortal venerable losing confidence. Ever since his parents died in his childhood, he too had fantasized about them still being alive. Facing a demon beast back then, his father was just a mortal who, in order to protect him, fearlessly drew the beast away. It was his father's example that gave him the courage to fight to the death to protect an Xin from the same village. Later, he met Guan, the most important mentor of his life, whose strength and fearlessness guided him. The fear of the celestial spirit immortal venerable made Enhao angry. He would not allow the celestial spirit immortal venerable to display such loss of composure. What fear is there in death? Touched by Enhao's gaze, the celestial spirit immortal venerable took a deep breath and looked back at the celestial spirit god with a determined expression. He struggled to raise his right hand, facing the aura of the heaven-balancing golden immortal. His hand shaking uncontrollably, not from fear, but from being unable to bear the pressure. Even in death, I must protect him. The celestial spirit immortal venerable bit his teeth, thinking thus in his heart. Suddenly, the celestial spirit god appeared abruptly in front of the two, raising the celestial Tao divine axe high, ready to strike at Enhao. He intended to execute Enhao right in front of the celestial spirit immortal venerable. The pupils of the celestial spirit immortal venerable shrank. Time seemed to freeze, and he felt so slow. Although Enhao was right beside him, his hand just couldn't reach him. Enhao's face was illuminated by a bright light. He remained fierce, his eyes filled with towering rage, staring fixedly at the celestial spirit god. He was ready to face death, but he did not wish to die without dignity. Boom! Darkness fell before Enhao's eyes, and then a wild wind arose. The pressure that bound him suddenly vanished, but another indescribable force enveloped him, forcing him to close his eyes. Ha! The surprised voice of the celestial spirit god rang out, startling Enhao into hurriedly opening his eyes. When he saw the figure before him, his eyes widened, and his body trembled. Between the celestial spirit god and Enhao, a figure appeared, blocking the celestial Tao divine axe in the hands of the celestial spirit god. The divine axe was suspended above the head of this person, unable to fall, the blade about 10 centimeters from their forehead, but it was these 10 centimeters that saved Enhao's life. The celestial spirit immortal venerable also felt the binds on himself disappear and turned to look at the figure that had appeared. His brows furrowed tightly. His eyes filled with fear. Master! Enhao exclaimed excitedly. That person was none other than Guan. Guan, dressed in black, stood in front of Enhao, his robe fluttering, the Xian Hong sword hung at his waist, his right hand still resting on the hilt, as he calmly stared down the celestial spirit god. As their four eyes met, the celestial spirit god's gaze held a scrutinizing hint, while Guan was as peaceful as still water. Guan had imagined countless times standing in confrontation with the celestial spirit god. Now that the moment had truly arrived, his heart settled into an unprecedented calm. At that moment, facing the celestial spirit god was not just Guan. There was also the extremity, Yang Xian, and the Black Profound Emperor. Search the novel Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., Please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 552. Celestial I Dao Skill. 1 Sword Slays God. Celestial Spirit God. Middle stage of Hungtian Golden Immortal Realm 0/0/0. Guan looked at the lifespan detection prompt before him, feeling puzzled. The fact that information could be detected indicated that this celestial spirit god was indeed in real flesh. A situation where all values were 0 made him think of the divine exotic ghost king. Was this so-called immortality dependent on sacrificing one's own lifespan to some power? Who are you? The celestial spirit god's voice echoed in the fragmented dark space, his posture poised with the axe raised. Guan stood before him gazing calmly and said, "As an immortal god, yet you seek to annihilate all beings in the great world, I really want to know, is this your own principle of action, or the will of the celestial court?" In his past life, while he was still on Earth City, he had heard of the myths of the celestial court, with both positive and negative aspects. The status of the celestial court in mythology was undeniably recognized by the Huaxia people. This life, whenever he heard of the celestial court, his feelings were complex, joyful yet anxious. He was joyful that the name of the celestial court could reach the earth where he came from. Was there hope for him to return? Anxious because, if the celestial court truly existed, would his writings of Journey to the West and the Investiture of the Gods alarm the celestial court? These emotions had been smoothed out as time passed. The celestial spirit god looked at Guan and asked, "Is it important?" "Very important." The answer made the celestial spirit god fall silent for a moment. The celestial spirit god solemnly said, "The heavenly Tao has its celestial rules, celestial gods have their own choices." This response slightly changed Guan's view of him. By this point, that the celestial spirit god could maintain the image of the celestial court was enough to prove his loyalty to it. And it also indicated that his attitude towards the celestial spirit great world stemmed from personal feelings. A force more powerful than the celestial spirit god erupted, repelling him, and the collapsing dark space shattered as well, transporting them back into the cosmos. Tao protecting divine essence. The powerful divine power dispersed the celestial Tao divine light surrounding the celestial spirit god, revealing his true form. He was dressed in heavy silver armor, his helmet adorned with a silver dragon, his breastplate resembled a qilin, shoulder pads with phoenixes spreading their wings, and a red belt emanating pieces of world power. In his hand, the celestial Tao divine axe contained vast heavenly power, blazing and imposing. An astonished expression appeared on the stern face of the celestial spirit god. Just one move, and he felt that the other's cultivation level was not weaker than his own. With such Tao practice, why intervene in the calamity of the great world? The celestial spirit god stared intently at Guan and asked in a deep voice. He could feel boundless way of cause and effect enveloping the cosmos, and there was no escape for him. Even the connection to the heavenly Tao was severed. The opponent was exceedingly adept in the way of cause and effect. Guan raised his right hand, the celestial star sword appeared in his grasp, and the blade wrapped itself in dazzling sword light, intensely bright. And Hao looked at Guan holding the sword, his emotions surging, feeling as if his blood was boiling, his face turning bright red. The celestial spirit immortal venerable looked at Guan with a complex look, especially noticing in Hao's expression, and felt even more mixed emotions. At this moment, the beings within the celestial spirit great world could not see the confrontation outside. They could only see the cosmic starry sky, and the whole world silenced because of it. The beings were very nervous, unclear about what was to come. On a dilapidated island, Leah lay on the cliff, struggling to look up. The divine exotic immortal spirit appeared on his shoulder, excitedly looking towards the universe. Leah could feel its excitement and immediately guessed the reason. His expression turned complex, but it was as though a burden had been lifted from his heart. "Indeed, it still depends on you. You are the true protector of this world unparalleled." Leah gazed at the cosmic starry sky, thinking thus, his eyes gradually filled with admiration. Just as this thought occurred, a sword light burst through the cosmic starry sky, illuminating the heavens and earth, making Leah instinctively close his eyes. In the cosmic void, the celestial spirit god froze in place, the darkness behind him cleaved in two by a streak of sword light, still gripping the celestial Tao divine axe, trembling all over. He fixated on Guan ahead, while Guan maintained the sword-swinging posture. The body of the celestial spirit god developed cracks, divine blood seeping out, his condition greatly resembling an Hao's. So fast. The celestial spirit immortal venerable stared at Guan, his expression grave. He hadn't seen clearly how Guan had swung his sword, and Hao's sense of it wasn't as profound, but he could tell that his master had suppressed the celestial spirit god's momentum, which excited him. The celestial spirit god's gaze sharpened, suddenly leaping up, nearly instantly. He burst forth with an even stronger aura, a vast sea of light appearing above him in the universe, and the celestial spirit god plunged into it, vanishing from sight. Soon after, within the light sea, a massive eye appeared. As this colossal eye opened, eyes of all sizes appeared from every direction in the universe, densely surrounding Guan and the two others, all these eyes fixated on them. Far away, the immortal seeker witnessed this scene, his expression changing once again. Celestial Eye Dao skill, he actually mastered such a great divine power. The immortal seeker was no longer startled for the first time by the celestial spirit god. He hadn't expected that he was still underestimating the celestial spirit god. His gaze unintentionally switched to Guan. For some reason, he could not see Guan's true face, indicating that the other party was using some powerful method to isolate his senses. However, looking at Guan's figure, it felt familiar, as if he had met him before. But no matter how much he thought, he just couldn't remember. He didn't think he had a poor memory. Rather, the other had employed the power of cause and effect. The celestial spirit god had astonished him, and this suddenly appearing mysterious existence also filled him with curiosity and awe. All these years in the Great Thousand World, you are the first one to force me to exert my full strength. Those who defy the heavenly Tao should be reduced to ashes and smoke. The voice of the celestial spirit god echoed, authoritative and domineering. In an instant, countless celestial eyes burst open in the starry sky, their pupils emanating multicolored lights. Almost instantly, Guan's mana enveloped celestial spirit immortal venerable, and Hao, and the celestial spirit great world below. The universe began to twist violently. Distant meteors ignited into towering flames, while others were frozen solid. The celestial Eye Dao skill can invoke the power of the heavenly Tao, allowing the 3,000 great Tao to aid him. This skill could destroy the Great Thousand World. The face of the celestial spirit immortal venerable was solemn as he spoke. And Hao saw streams of nebulous starry seas appear in the distance, ravaging the cosmic void. Everything before him seemed chaotic and even made him feel dizzy. An invisible force was invading him, an eerie sensation he had never experienced before. The celestial spirit immortal venerable looked at Guan and said, "Once the celestial Eye Dao skill is employed, you are essentially making enemies with the 3,000 great Tao. You cannot." He hadn't finished speaking when Guan suddenly swung his sword, and a silver-blue sword shadow appeared out of nowhere, sweeping across the dazzling illusionary universe. In front of this sword shadow, meteors, heaven and earth, star clouds, and sun and moon all seemed insignificant. With one slash, thousands of celestial eyes were completely extinguished. Above, the sea of celestial light was also slashed away, revealing the figure of the celestial spirit god, his silver armor shattered, exposing his bloody and mangled body, his helmet thrown aside, his black hair splayed out. The celestial spirit god's eyes widened, incredulously looking at Guan suddenly appeared before him, his left hand quickly grasping the celestial spirit god's long hair, then raising his sword to slash. The sword light shone across the universe, illuminating thousands of great worlds and countless little worlds. Celestial spirit immortal venerable, and Hao, immortal seeker, and the observing great power cultivators from afar all blinked their eyes, and when they opened them again, the omnipresent celestial Tao pressure enveloping the universe began to dissipate. They all looked in the same direction and saw a blurred figure floating in the void, one hand wielding a sword, the other holding the decapitated head of the celestial spirit god. Behind that figure still lingered the magnificent blue sword shadow, scattered deep into the universe. The divine blood of the celestial spirit god spilled down, scorching the space, causing meteors to be penetrated by the droplets, much of the divine blood falling into the celestial spirit great world, vanishing from the mortal world. The celestial spirit immortal venerable watched, dumbfounded. And Hao too was shocked. He knew his master was strong, but the celestial spirit god had already demonstrated an invincible demeanor, and such a powerful being had no chance against his master. Even more hopeless than the celestial spirit immortal venerable facing the celestial spirit god. At that moment, the decapitated head of the celestial spirit god that Guan held in his hand still had its eyes open, gazing up at Guan, filled with fear. You! It's impossible. Who are you really? The celestial spirit god asked in a trembling voice, unable to accept that his celestial I Dao skill had been annihilated by a single sword strike. Even an image came to his mind. S.E.A. the Ovalfire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. That person, whose sword Dao talent had left a deep impression, if allowed to grow, could he reach the level of the man before him? Guan looked down at him expressionlessly, his right hand performing the universe in hand divine power, drawing the head into his palm, disappearing from sight. After doing all this, Guan turned around, looking at the universe. His eternal infinite divine sword had broken the celestial I Dao skill, yet the universe was still collapsing. This scene seemed to be moving towards the future he had predicted before. Although he was powerful, he could not manipulate the Dao rules of the Great Thousand World. Because this Great Thousand World did not belong to him. Guan could feel that the reason for the universe's collapse was not just the celestial I Dao skill, but other factors as well. His gaze looked far towards the celestial spirit immortal venerable. The celestial spirit immortal venerable was also looking back at him, his face calm like a deep lake. And Hao also snapped out of his excitement, realizing the universe was collapsing, the atmosphere everywhere dense with danger and tension. Could it be? And Hao seemed to think of something, his expression turning unsightly. The celestial spirit immortal venerable turned his head towards him and calmly said, "Previously, I extracted all the heaven and earth's power, already causing this Great Thousand World to lose its stable Dao order. Coupled with the disruption of the celestial I Dao skill, this Great Thousand World is on the verge of annihilation, ceasing to exist." Upon hearing this, and Hao, surprisingly unalarmed, looked at the celestial spirit immortal venerable and asked, "What should we do then? Don't you have the slightest pity for all living beings?" The celestial spirit immortal venerable turned his head, looking far off at the figure of Guan, and said, "Previously, indeed I had none. However, when I saw him just now protecting the creatures of various heavens and earths from the oppression of the celestial I Dao skill, I suddenly felt that I really should do something. It's also a good opportunity for me to repay him for his care and instruction towards you." As his words fell, the celestial spirit immortal venerable burst into a bright light. His celestial Dao golden core and heaven and earth Dao fruit flew out from his chest, hovering over his shoulders. "I will let this Great Thousand World be reborn in a new way, wash away the past cause and effect, allowing Celestial Court to not pursue the death of the celestial spirit god, so he can stay here at ease." Search the novel Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 553. Reshaping the Great Thousand World. Hearing the words of Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable, and Hao's expression darkened. He realized what the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable intended to do, and he could neither agree with it nor stop it. The Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable wanted to sacrifice himself to save all living beings. As a son, and Hao could not agree, yet he could not disregard the life and death of all beings to stop him either. The Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable took a deep look at Guan. The celestial Dao golden core on his shoulder burst forth with golden light, and the heaven and earth Dao fruit rose up, quickly blossoming into expanding spiritual energy that symbolized vigorous life force. And Hao was baptized by the celestial Dao spiritual qi, and his wounds recovered rapidly. He clenched his fists tightly, gritting his teeth as he watched the gradually dissipating figure of the celestial spirit immortal venerable. Guan watched this scene from afar, feeling somewhat conflicted. He guessed that the celestial spirit immortal venerable had noticed him, which made him uneasy. However, due to the relationship between the celestial spirit immortal venerable and Hao, he could not make a move against the celestial spirit immortal venerable. Now that the celestial spirit immortal venerable had chosen to sacrifice himself to protect the beings of great heaven and earth, it was also a good thing for Guan. "I was born in the celestial spirit great world and owe you a debt of gratitude. If there is a chance in the future, I will assist you in being reborn." That's what Guan thought to himself. He didn't dwell on it any longer but chose to carefully sense the creation of heaven and earth. He too could create a Great Thousand World, but even if he did, he could not take a lifespan from his own Great Thousand World, so he did not do so. Taking a lifespan from within his own great thousand world would be like devouring his own mana, which would not increase his mana. However, even without doing so, he could comprehend the creation of the celestial spirit immortal venerable, thereby enhancing his understanding of the Tao. This was a rare opportunity, an opportunity brought by the self-sacrifice of an innate golden immortal. As the spiritual energy of nature spread, the twisted space of the universe gradually calmed down. The beings of the celestial spirit great world, being the first to be swept by the nature's spiritual energy, recovered their chi power. The celestial vault also quickly took shape, replacing the view of the cosmic starry sky. Everything was returning to normal. At that moment, the immortal seeker unexpectedly flew towards Guen. If it weren't for their past acquaintance, Guen wouldn't have let him approach. With the mystery of the celestial dark purple micro Saint Tao body, even when the immortal seeker arrived in front of Guen, he still couldn't see his true form. Looking at the blurred image of Guen, the immortal seeker took a deep breath and said, "Fellow Taoist, by slaying the celestial spirit god, you will bring immense troubles upon yourself. Each immortal god holds a position in the celestial Tao. Once they fall, the celestial court must be aware. Even if you use cause and effect to isolate this great thousand world, as long as the celestial court wants to investigate, finding you is only a matter of time. Among the celestial court, there are countless beings more powerful than the celestial spirit god. To the immortal gods of the celestial court, nothing is more important than its majesty." Guen looked down at the immortal seeker and asked, "So, what are you trying to say?" The immortal seeker replied, "If fellow Taoist can secure a celestial Tao immortal position before the celestial court becomes aware, with your Tao practice, even if you're punished, the loss won't be significant. Celestial Tao immortal positions are easy to come by? I must be honest, I have an opportunity for a celestial Tao immortal position in my possession." "That's not necessary. You may leave now. Your presence is a threat to me and to this great thousand world." Guan's response elicited a wry smile from the immortal seeker, who immediately bowed and took his leave. Before going far, his soul dispersed. The immortal seeker's method of fleeing this realm was self-demise. Guen wasn't much affected. He turned his gaze toward Enhao. Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable was remaking the Tao rules of the great world, harboring a personal interest in bestowing his Tao inheritance upon Enhao. Even though it couldn't make Enhao's cultivation level soar directly, it could help Enhao cultivate better. Guen didn't interfere, nor did he fear any tricks from the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable, because he could sense that the causality of the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable was dissipating, not an act. However, Guen frowned lightly, his gaze shifting to the depths of the universe. As the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable was reconstructing the rules of the Great Thousand World, Celestial Tao Destiny appeared out of thin air along with the Tao. This made Guen very curious about the connection between the Heavenly Tao and the Great Tao. He had always thought that the Heavenly Tao was weaker than the Great Tao, or that the Heavenly Tao was born based on the Great Tao. Now it seemed that this Heavenly Tao was as dominant as the Great Tao. The figure of the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable completely faded away, and Enhao had fully recovered from his injuries. Enhao looked around, his eyebrows slightly furrowed. He, too, felt the destiny of the Heavenly Tao. Could it be that all of this was not the doing of the Celestial Spirit God, and he only chose to act at this juncture? Enhao muttered to himself. His gaze then fell upon Guen. Guen felt his gaze and turned to look. Their eyes met, and Guen understood what was in Enhao's eyes. Enhao couldn't make out Guan's expression, but being watched by Guen made him feel at peace, and a smile appeared on his face. Wasn't this the moment he had been looking forward to? You'd better think it through. The beings you save will eventually die, and the Great Thousand World will return to normal in time. Guan's voice reached Enhao's ears. Enhao smiled and retorted, "Master, how many of the beings you saved are still alive? They will eventually die, and you still took action, didn't you?" Guen asked, "Are you willing to let go of an Xian? And your wife, your children, can you truly cut all ties? Didn't you make arrangements for them? The only person I'm sorry to is you. I've lived for nearly 10,000 years and never repaid you, only caused you worries." Enhao spoke to Guen with a look of guilt. Guen really wanted to say that it was actually quite a simple task and no trouble at all, but looking at Enhao's expression, he knew that nothing he said would change Enhao's choice. Now, Guen was strong, but not strong enough, at least not enough to free the Great Thousand World from the Heavenly Tao, at least not enough to develop the world he lived in according to his wishes. However, Guan was quite relieved to see Enhao take on such responsibility. He couldn't change such an outcome, but he could leave Enhao a way out. Guan turned and disappeared into the void. More and more divine senses swept across, able to lock onto Enhao, yet not daring to come close. The previous battle made them shudder. Even though they hadn't seen clearly what had happened, the shadow of the eternal infinite divine sword and the grand and spectacular celestial I Dao skill still gave them chills. Even Taoist Zhang Zizai Immortal and profound Yuan Free Immortal would feel like they could be annihilated at any moment when facing the recent battle. Enhao looked toward the celestial spirit great world, his gaze filled with affection, and slowly raised his arms, murmuring, "Young Immortal Emperor, I will carry out the task you left unfinished." Inside the Taoist field of the beginningless, an Xin, celestial demon child, Chen Chuan, and others had not been stripped of their mana and chi power by the celestial spirit Immortal Venerable. They were always discussing the battle situation. Guan appeared out of nowhere beside an Xin. As he appeared, the crowd immediately gathered around. "Master, did you make a move? Was that sword intent just now the eternal infinite divine sword? Master, what's the situation in outer heaven now? And how in Zhu Shi, who won and who lost? Who was the person who spoke earlier? They sounded so arrogant. I wonder how high their cultivation level is." Everyone kept asking, curious and excited. With the protection of the Taoist field of the beginningless, they hadn't truly felt the oppression from the outside world. Guan looked toward the celestial vault. "From now on, you will never see those two again." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was stunned, their excitement immediately extinguished, and they subconsciously looked at an Xin. They weren't familiar with Zhu Shi. They only knew that an Xin and Enhao were as close as siblings. An Xin too was stunned. She didn't have a breakdown of emotions, but looked at Guan and asked, "Master, have you seen him already?" "Yes." "Then let it be." An Xin was very calm, and Guan did not say more. He turned to the others. "A new era is coming. The universe will become infinitely vast. From now on, you will no longer live in the great heaven and earth, but in the great thousand world." The great thousand world. Everyone was astounded. They believed Guan's words, and so they began to fantasize about the vastness of the great thousand world. And Shengtian was also somewhat dazed. Although he had cut off the cause and effect with Enhao, he had always hoped to meet Enhao. Would he really never be able to meet him from now on? SEA the Novel Fire, NE*T website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. "Look!" Celestial Scion suddenly pointed at the sky, exclaiming loudly. Everyone turned their heads to look and saw a sun appearing in the sky that was growing rapidly larger. Celestial Demon Child was about to ask Guan when suddenly, an unimaginable shockwave descended from the sky, leaving everyone in a bewildered state. The scene seemed to freeze, everyone was fixed in place, only Guan could still move. Guan looked up and could see Enhao's figure, which was fading away. Enhao had chosen the same path as his father, the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable. The Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable had chosen to sacrifice himself to reshape the Tao rules of the Great Thousand World, and Enhao had chosen to sacrifice himself to reassemble the shattered Great Thousand World. Enhao was able to do this because he had received the Tao of the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable. He had become the controller of the Great Thousand World. In order for all living beings to quickly survive the calamities set by the heavenly Tao, he chose to sacrifice himself. In this catastrophe, Zhu Shi was sent out of the universe by Immortal Seeker, the Celestial Spirit God was captured, and both the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable and Enhao fell one after another. At first glance, it seemed there were no victors. Guan sighed at the capriciousness of fate, but he was also looking forward to the brand new Great Thousand World. Anyway, this calamity was just a node in his life. He needed to keep striving to become stronger, intuition telling him that one day he would no longer be able to conceal himself, and he would need to directly face the might of the celestial court. When that day comes, whether he would compromise and ascend to immortality or make other plans would depend on how high his cultivation level was. Guan retracted his gaze and walked toward his own pavilion. As for the immobilized crowd, they wouldn't have any issues. Guan deliberately allowed Enhao's power to enter the dojo, letting them rapidly get through the upcoming drastic changes of heaven and earth like all living beings. When they awoke, they would only think they had a dream. Guan suddenly looked in one direction, a trace of surprise in his voice. Everything in the universe was still under Enhao's power, Yet Shenzhen was unaffected, still fervently drawing in her house. Guan felt a special aura from Shenzhen, one that he couldn't deduce. This made him even more curious. What kind of great Tao had Shenzhen stepped into? As Guan was pondering, a powerful light that drained all colors from everything descended from the sky, enveloping his figure and all of existence. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 554 9 Heaven's Cyan Bird. Tai Ching golden immortal sunlight was brilliant, filtering through the gaps in the leaves and leaving patches of light across the grass in the forest. An Xian sat on a rock beside a stream, delivering a sermon to a group of boys and girls. Her voice was mesmerizing, so much so that even the birds perched on the trees cocked their heads to listen attentively. She had been speaking for half a day now, her patience greater than before, as a gentle smile constantly graced her face. Seeing the Chenkuan sect disciples enraptured by her Taoist teachings, an Xian turned her head to look around but couldn't find Guan. However, she believed her master was still there. Indeed he was. 10 yards away, on an old tree, Guan was lying on a branch, hesitating as he stared at his attribute list. Name: Guan. Lifespan: 9,555,89,904,572,611. Physique: primordial infinite body. Cultivation level: heaven balancing golden immortal realm perfection. 800 years had passed since the Great Thousand Worlds restructuring, a cataclysmic process. But under and how and the celestial spirit immortal venerable's protection, all beings were unaffected, feeling only as if they had sunk into a profound dream. Upon awakening from the dream, every major sect realized that the world had become boundlessly vast, so much so that even beings above the heaven and earth flying immortal realm, who flew towards outer heaven, were utterly astounded by the current world. The endless expanse of the world, a thicker celestial Tao light layer, and the universe had become even more dim. And How had gathered all the worlds within the cosmos to create the entirely new celestial spirit great world. The celestial spirit great world was more than 10,000 times larger than the celestial spirit great world. In the previous 10 millennia, not only the celestial spirit great world had faced calamities of the heavenly Tao, but other great worlds experienced the same. Without the protection of the supporting Tao Sword Venerable, many had long been eradicated of all life. Thus, after the restructuring of the celestial spirit great world, the heavens and the earth became vast yet desolate. With the world so infinitely vast and the number of living beings not even close to the new world's capacity, the calamities of the heavenly Tao receded. With no impetuousness left in nature's spiritual energy, Yang Immortal Emperor's proposal had been implemented by Enhao, and everything was evolving for the better. Worth mentioning is that after Enhao's sacrifice, his wife and children received considerable cosmic destiny, and within just 100 years, Guan witnessed the birth of a genius in the En family with a potential lifespan of 8,000 years. Guan wasn't sure if it was the world's favor or Enhao's will that looked after his descendants, but according to his calculations, the En family would rise in the next 10,000 years, eventually becoming one of the strong families in the world. Right now, Guan's hesitation was not about the affairs of others, but his own concerns. He planned to first comprehensively enhance his own Taoist techniques. Then, after accumulating another 200 billion years of lifespan, he could strike for an even higher realm. A lifespan nearing 900 billion years seemed massive, but in truth, if he intended to enhance every aspect, it would probably be spent soon. No matter, he must improve. Even though the celestial spirit immortal venerable had already reshaped the order of the great Tao in the Great Thousand World, and the celestial spirit god had not fallen, temporarily avoiding the celestial court's notice, he had to maintain the pace of getting stronger. After this increase in strength, he would start dealing with the celestial spirit god. Guan began to utilize his lifespan breakthrough. You have activated the lifespan breakthrough function. Based on your current realm, the following breakthrough locations have been selected for you. 1. Ascending to Yellow Heaven. 2. Celestial Extreme 9 Heavens. 3. Abyss Tao Sea. 4. Path of the Great Tao. 5. Eastern Sea Celestial Palace. 6. Primordial Emperor Domain. 7. Profound Abyss Divine Pool. 8. Golden Immortal Ancestor Tree. 9. Ling Mountain. Looking at the choices that had popped up before him, many of which he was seeing for the first time, Guan couldn't help but be moved by the infinite vastness of the Great Tao. The path of the Great Tao connected the 3,000 great worlds, and beyond the Great World were many more mysterious places. Guan's previous breakthrough had taken him to the celestial extreme 9 heavens, which left a deep impression on him. After some contemplation, he felt that returning to the celestial extreme 9 heavens was the best option. He was uncertain of the other locations, and although the celestial extreme 9 heavens had powerful beings, they were few in number. With his decision made, Guan chose the celestial extreme 9 heavens for teleportation. Teleporting to celestial extreme 9 heavens will require the consumption of 10 billion years of lifespan. Do you wish to proceed? Continue. Guan closed his eyes after making his choice, and that long-absent sensation of dizziness appeared. After a while, Guan opened his eyes, and what met his gaze was an endless sea of clouds, majestic and vast. The sky was still so high with no land in sight, and no matter which direction he looked, he saw nothing but the sea of clouds and the sky. He immediately activated his lifespan barrier and sat down to meditate on the spot. Without saying a word, he began to evolve and improve, starting with his physique. Each time, Guan invested 1 billion years of lifespan, operating slowly. It took nearly 4 billion years to advance from the primordial Tao golden body to the primordial infinite body. This time would surely take even more. Billion after billion years, Guan was collected and composed, not feeling the slightest bit of heartache. In the end, it took approximately 50 billion years for the primordial infinite body to advance to the primordial reincarnation undying body. As the final prompt fell, an enormous surge of Tao spiritual qi flooded towards Guan. The boundless sea of clouds began to churn in a very short time, luckily, not as dramatically as the previous breakthrough. Guan closed his eyes and began to immerse himself. An hour later, his physique's transformation was successful. With the primordial reincarnation undying body, not only did his physique grow stronger, but the power of the Great Tao could no longer control his flesh, and it was not worn down by reincarnation. Even if his lifespan reached its limit, his body could exist forever. Now, he could enter reincarnation in his physical form as smoothly as a fish takes to water. Guan opened his eyes and his gaze fell on the cultivation technique column in his attribute list. Upgrade the main technique first. Great Tao Great Freedom as You Wish Bible. He began to invest lifespan for evolution. Investing 36 billion years of lifespan at once, the Great Tao Great Freedom as You Wish Bible was elevated to the Taoist Dominator skill, reaching an in-depth level of understanding. Tao spiritual qi surged toward him once again, and an endless stream of Taoist technique memories burst forth in his mind. Sar the Nelfer. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. The Taoist Dominator skill, as the name implies, could dominate the Great Tao. Once mastered, Guan could comprehend any kind of Great Tao, and in facing any kind of Great Tao, he could discern its weaknesses in an extremely short time. Most importantly, this technique could merge the 3,000 Great Tao into one force, aptly named the Dominator's power. Another half an hour passed, and Guan successfully mastered the Taoist Dominator skill. He didn't have time to experience it in depth and continued to enhance other Taoist techniques. Regardless of the tier the Taoist technique reached, lifespan evolution could always allow Guan to master it within half an hour, which was also a significant advantage. The Great Thousand Following Heart to Void skill was upgraded to the Sun and Moon Selfless Divine Tao, consuming nearly 50 billion years of lifespan. This technique helped Guan to conceal his cultivation level and aura. Even those with a realm higher than his could not see through it. Though of course if the disparity in cultivation was too vast, it might not remain hidden, which was why he continued to elevate this technique. The Sun and Moon Selfless Divine Tao was even more domineering, allowing Guan to disappear into the order of the Great Tao. Even if he was still present, no one would detect him. He could even turn his aura into the sun, moon, and stars, perfectly concealing himself. Again, the inheritance took half an hour. After the inheritance ended, Guan's eyes turned to the secret skills, preparing to upgrade his combat methods. Just then, a vast aura descended, one that far surpassed that of the heaven-balancing golden immortal, causing a slight change in Guan's expression. He looked up. He saw a gigantic cyan bird appear in the sky, its wings spread wide, eclipsing the sun. Its feathers shimmered with the colors of the rainbow, like a godly bird from creation, radiating an endless ancient and holy aura. This cyan bird was by far the most colossal creature Guan had ever seen. Even set against the celestial extreme nine heavens, the celestial vault seemed almost incapable of containing it. Guan hurled a lifespan detection at the Cyan bird. Nine heavens Cyan bird, early stage of Tai Ching Golden Immortal Realm 218,726,929, 702/50, 000, 000, 000, 000, 000//50, 000, 000, 000, 000, more than 200 billion years old. A lifespan of 50 trillion years. Truly terrifying. Killing it would direct unlock the ability for a trillion years of lifespan. But the words, Tai Ching Golden Immortal, only allowed Guan to contemplate the idea. Of course, even if Guan had the ability to slay it, he would not take action. That was not his style. Moreover, he suspected that behind the nine heavens Cyan bird, there stood even more powerful immortals, like the nine heavens Immortal Emperor. As Guan marveled at the nine heavens Cyan bird's lifespan, the bird suddenly descended, landing 10,000 miles away. 10,000 miles is a long distance for mortals, but to the nine heavens Cyan bird, a single movement of its claws could reach Guan's dojo. This made Guan tense, ready to teleport away at any moment. The nine heavens Cyan bird folded its wings and perched on the sea of clouds, its head reaching unscalable heights. Guan then saw a figure emerge, the white-robed woman known as the nine heavens Immortal Emperor, appearing atop the head of the nine heavens Cyan bird. As before, Guan was still unable to perform lifespan detection on the nine heavens Immortal Emperor, indicating that her true body was not present. Two powerful entities appeared beside her, causing Guan to dare not continue his evolution. He decided to wait for the nine heavens Immortal Emperor and the nine heavens Cyan bird to leave before resuming. If they refused to leave, he would have no choice but to teleport back to the celestial spirit great world. Search the novel Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 555. Entering Reincarnation. Nine heavens Immortal Emperor stood atop the head of the nine heavens Cyan bird, his gaze sweeping across the sea of clouds, which tightened Guan's heart and made him constantly ready to teleport back. Each teleportation needed 100 billion year lifespan, making it 200 billion year lifespan for a round trip. Naturally, Guan was reluctant to return lightly. The nine heavens Immortal Emperor had not discovered the lifespan barrier. The nine heavens Cyan bird was also unaware. After a while, a slightly childish female voice rang out. "Your Majesty, are you truly not going to the Grand Assembly of 10,000 Immortals?" Guan could feel that this voice originated from the nine heavens Cyan bird, even though the Cyan bird had not spoken. The nine heavens Immortal Emperor, looking into the distance with a cold expression, replied, "Boring. I've attended several times. There's not much difference. All superficial interactions, and I don't need the opportunities from the Grand Assembly of 10,000 Immortals. Your Majesty, although the celestial extreme nine heavens is uniquely endowed, discussing Tao with other immortal cultivation great powers could further aid your cultivation. If you wish to go, you can go on my behalf. If you don't go, there's no point in me going. Forget it, let's not go. By the way, Your Majesty, what do you think caused this anomaly?" The nine heavens Cyan bird changed the topic and looked around the boundless sea of clouds as it spoke. The nine heavens Immortal Emperor, expressionless, said, "The celestial extreme nine heavens, located above the Great Thousand World, is a juncture of the Great Tao. The anomaly here might have originated from the lower realm. Even I cannot directly determine." Hearing this, the nine heavens Cyan bird fell into thought, its bird eyes flickering with strange light. Above the Great Thousand World? Guan captured this information, growing more curious about the celestial extreme nine heavens. Could it be that the nine heavens Immortal Emperor has no connection to the celestial court? Guan did not feel the celestial Tao destiny from the nine heavens Cyan bird, and as for the nine heavens Immortal Emperor, since she was not the true body, he could not sense anything. If he closed his eyes, he wouldn't even be aware of her presence. After a while, the nine heavens Immortal Emperor leaped into the air and flew towards the distance. The nine heavens Cyan bird followed closely behind, and they soon vanished at the end of the sea of clouds. Guan relaxed and waited patiently. 1 hour later, No longer sensing the aura of Nine Heavens Cyan Bird, he reopened the attribute panel and continued to enhance. Next up was the Eternal Infinite Divine Sword. Although he had already mastered the Sacred Heart Sword Dao, which merged with the River of Sword Dao, deemed an independent existence, he felt he couldn't solely rely on the Sacred Heart Sword Dao. He needed stronger sword techniques as his trump card. The Eternal Infinite Divine Sword evolved into the 3,000 Slaying Dao Swords, achieving the Mastery Realm, consuming 80 billion year lifespan. During the half-hour inheritance, neither the Nine Heavens Immortal Emperor nor the Nine Heavens Cyan Bird returned. Thus, Guan continued to invest his lifespan in evolution. Profound Yellow Eternal Dao Step advanced into Daola Celestial Net Step, consuming 42 billion year lifespan and reaching the realm of integration. Celestial Dark Purple Micro Saint Dao Body evolved into Hongmeng Void Golden Body, also at the realm of integration, consuming 76 billion year lifespan. After upgrading the most core Daoist techniques, Guan turned his attention to the Great Soul Capturing Immortal Technique. This technique could perform soul search, but as the enemy's realm was higher, the difficulty of soul search increased. It needed enhancement. This was still the transformation of soul capturing technique that Zhang Qiong had taught him years ago. Guan spent 130 billion year lifespan in one breath, allowing the Great Soul Capturing Immortal Technique to advance several levels, finally evolving into Calamity Absolute I. Calamity Absolute I could not only perform soul search but also bring bad luck to the enemy, with the nature of the calamity shaped by the caster's imagination. A very domineering divine skill. That's it. Search * the novel. F. Iyer. NT website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Guan dared not continue evolving because, accounting for the lifespan barrier's consumption, he only had 230 billion year lifespan left and still needed 100 billion year lifespan to teleport back. After a series of evolutions and enhancements, Guan felt a complete transformation even though his cultivation level had not increased. His strength had greatly changed. Now, handling Celestial Spirit God should be effortless. Thinking this, Guan stood up. He gazed at the constantly churning sea of clouds, as if for one last look, since he definitely needed to change locations upon the next breakthrough. The recent appearance of the Nine Heavens Immortal Emperor and Nine Heavens Cyan Bird was definitely not a coincidence. They must have intended to investigate his whereabouts. Even if their words didn't directly reflect it, he had to stay alert. Guan chose to teleport back, and as he thought, he vanished on the spot. Guan returned to the forests near the Chenkuan sect and could no longer see an Xian and the others. Unable to find him, an Xian returned to the dojo to cultivate. Guan did not hurry back. He jumped down from a tree, crossed a creek, and sat down on a large stone by the creek. Lifting his right hand, palm facing upwards, a skull appeared in his palm, the size of a pebble, indeed that of the Celestial Spirit God. The disheveled Celestial Spirit God opened his eyes and looked up at Guan, his expression becoming calm. After a century of suppression, he had adjusted his mindset and was prepared to face any outcome. Guan's pupils suddenly turned deep red, and the pupils of the Celestial Spirit God facing him involuntarily widened. Then his expression turned dull. Calamity Absolute I. He began to scour the memories of the Celestial Spirit God. The morning sun shone down, casting a long shadow of Guan. After a long while, Guan's eyes returned to their normal color, and his brows furrowed. The memories of the Celestial Spirit God were too simple. Spending years meditating under the World Gate, much of his memory was blank, presumably related to the Celestial Court. However, Guan still obtained some useful information, such as why the Celestial Spirit God plotted against the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable. Many years ago, the Celestial Spirit God could have obliterated the Celestial Spirit Great World, but he wanted to obtain the World Punishment Dao Pearl held by the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable. The World Punishment Dao Pearl, born from the Great Dao, was a supreme treasure that could be used in battle and for comprehending the Dao, with infinite marvelous uses. The Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable dared not readily use the pearl, fearing its master would come searching. The owner of the World Punishment Dao Pearl was the Emperor Ziwei. Through the memory of the Celestial Spirit Immortal Venerable, Guan saw the Emperor Ziwei. This Emperor Ziwei looked exactly like the unparalleled Emperor Ziwei that the Black Profound Emperor had encountered in his lifetime. Guan guessed that the Emperor Ziwei was the reincarnation body of the Emperor Ziwei. Great powers project across the heavens, manifesting reincarnation, which is common. How formidable was the Emperor Ziwei, able to fight against hundreds of the same realm, and even force enemies to retreat. No wonder. Being the reincarnation of the Emperor Ziwei. As Guan reflected inwardly, the celestial spirit god regained his senses. Startled, he looked at Guan and asked, "What have you done to me?" Guan looked down at him and inquired, "Do you want to die or do you want to live?" When Guan questioned whether the celestial spirit god's apocalyptic acts were related to the celestial court, and the celestial spirit god admitted it was his own selfishness, Guan actually felt a trace of respect for him. The celestial spirit god was bold and accountable. It seemed a pity to kill such a person directly. The destruction by the celestial spirit god was nefarious to living beings, but from a cosmic perspective, he protected the cosmic order. Of course, whether the celestial spirit god wanted to live depended on his attitude. Faced with Guan's question, the celestial spirit god furrowed his brows. After a moment of silence he said, "I cannot possibly serve you. My fate today is merely reaping what I sowed. Had I not coveted the treasure and followed the heavenly Tao earlier, it would not have come to this. Just kill me." Having said so, the celestial spirit god closed his eyes. Suddenly, Guan asked, "Have you ever been immortal?" Hearing this, the celestial spirit god opened his eyes, looking at Guan in surprise. In the memory of the celestial spirit god, he was born a favored child of heaven and was taken as a disciple by the Emperor Ziwei early on. He stood above the masses from birth. Guan looked down at him and said coldly, "To kill you now would be too easy for you. Go to the human world and experience the struggles of humanity. In the eyes of immortal gods, mortal spirits are no different from dust, but how would you know the effort mortal spirits make just to survive?" As his words fell, Guan flipped his hand and threw the celestial spirit god into the creek. As the celestial spirit god fell, he looked at Guan. In his view, Guan was so magnificent. Indeed, he did not understand human suffering, but at that moment, he understood how mortals looked up to immortal gods. His vision quickly plunged into darkness. After Guan flipped his hand to let him go, he used his own divine sense to cast him into the cycle of reincarnation. After contemplating the Taoist dominator skill and the sun and moon selfless divine Tao, Guan could simply manipulate the path of reincarnation and make the celestial spirit god reincarnate. It was not difficult for him. He made the celestial spirit god be born in the celestial spirit great world to prevent him from escaping. The celestial spirit god was already bound by the Guiyuan divine Tao and his divine soul sealed. Without Guan's action, he would remain forever in the cycle of reincarnation, unable to escape. Search the novel Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 556. Guan's story. Guan entered the Taoist field of the beginningless, and from a distance, he saw two people engaged in combat high up on the mountains. It was LV Xian and Chen Chuan. These two were the most combative, even more so than the blood prison great saint, but they were merely sparring, not fighting out of anger, so Guan never stopped them. Watching Chen Chuan's elegance in the sky, Guan was very gratified. In his memories, he had never seen Xiao Chuan so spirited and confident. He also pondered when to let Chen Chuan recover his memories from his past life, but he felt that such matters shouldn't be rushed. Letting nature take its course was best. A figure suddenly appeared beside Guan. It was an Exan, who looked at Guan with a grievance and said, "Master, why didn't you say a word to me when you left yesterday?" You're the master, or am I the master?" "Ah, I just wanted to go out with you for a bit. If you're bored, you could go to the Chenkuan sect. Many new things will happen there, and I will also go to see the excitement." Really? Really? Guan was not lying. With the reshaping of the celestial spirit great world, various great heaven and earth started to interconnect. Sects began to wander the world, and in the coming years, the entire celestial spirit great world would embrace a thriving vitality. A new era was beginning. Sects vied for supremacy. Different great heaven and earth harbored different immortal cultivation philosophies, and these philosophies would clash, creating more sparks. The next era would be unprecedented. Those great powers who survived from the old era would rise to the pinnacle of authority, and the new great world would be far stronger than before. The new rules of heaven and earth would conceive more geniuses, even elevating the potential of these talents. Guan felt the destiny of heaven and earth, already foreseeing the birth of many geniuses with the ultimate lifespan of 9,999 years. He was very much looking forward to it. As the master and disciple chatted, they walked along the mountain path. The gentle breeze made an Exian a bit distracted. Unconsciously, she was already 9,521 years old. She felt her life experiences weren't rich, but this also meant she had lived a peaceful and comfortable life. She turned her head to look at her master beside her. His profile sent her heart into a state of tranquility. S.E.A. the Novel Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. She, too, began to feel anticipation. 10,000 years later, a million years later, or even 10 million years later, would she still be able to follow by her master's side? If she followed, what kinds of views would she see? The spring festival of the Chenkuan sect had just ended, and the shadows of cultivators could be seen everywhere between the mountains. Most of the cultivators were flying in the same direction, towards a giant city surrounded by mountains on all sides, bursting with rays of light like a mirage, brimming with the grandeur of an immortal city. This city was Chenkuan sect's main city. 1,000 years had passed since the great world was reshaped. The Chenkuan sect seized the opportunity to develop quickly, not only becoming the leader of the orthodox Taoist sect on the Nine-Spirit continent but also establishing prestige in the surrounding seas. This year, Chenkuan sect planned to hold the 100 Teachings Conference, inviting hundreds of orthodox Taoist sects from inside and outside the seas to discuss and exchange Taoist techniques. This was the first time for Chenkuan sect to hold such an event, making Chenkuan sect's main city extraordinarily lively. Within the main city, the library pavilion was packed. Under Nzin's guidance, the structure of Chenkuan sect was almost identical to the Supreme Sect's. However, Chenkuan sect was far away from the Supreme Sect, so the two sects had not intersected for the time being. Why is Chenkuan Venerable sold out again? With the foundation of the Chenkuan sect, why can't you print a few more copies? A young male disciple stood in front of the counter, glaring at the library pavilion disciple and demanded. The library pavilion disciple spread his hands helplessly and said, "Brother, shouting at me is no use, I'm just in charge of selling." The young male disciple glared at him and left with a flick of his sleeve. Then another disciple approached the counter to inquire about the book Chenkuan Venerable. At this moment, on the second floor of the library pavilion, Guan, dressed in blue robes, stood in front of a row of bookshelves browsing books. Celestial Demon Child came over and saw the title of the book he was looking at, not helping but curl her lips in distaste. "Young master, even a book like this is worth your time?" Outside the dojo, Guan had instructed not to call him master, but young master instead. Although Celestial Demon Child didn't understand, she thought calling him young master was quite nice. At least it made their relationship seem more equal, which often led her to wild fantasies. Guan, holding Nine Spirits Hero Legend, smiled softly and said, "As long as it's a book, it's worth reading." Since he started writing within the Chenkuan sect, a trend of novels had been set off, and Nine Spirits Hero Legend was one such novel about the protagonist's adventures, clearly trying to imitate his style. Hearing Guan's words, Celestial Demon Child pursed her lips and then turned to leave. She planned to take a walk in the city. With her cultivation level of the loose immortal realm, she was considered a great cultivator within Chenkuan sect and wouldn't run into trouble, especially with Guan there. After Celestial Demon Child left, Guan continued reading. It wasn't long before two women ascended to the second floor, none other than Li Xuanyu and Tang Kai. Since being saved by an Exian, they had lived on the Nine-Spirit continent. Later, seeing the Chenkuan sects rise to power, they voluntarily joined, and now they were also disciples of the Chenkuan sect. In reality, given their status, they could become elders, but they didn't want to be too tied down to the Chenkuan sect, knowing that they would eventually leave. "Sis, why did we come here?" Tang Kai asked in confusion. The library pavilion was full of miscellaneous books. If one sought the pursuit of Taoist techniques, they would visit the scripture pavilion. Li Xuanyu answered, "Just to look around. Your heart is too impatient. It's good to temper it." Her gaze swept through the second floor, passing over each disciple as if seeking something. However, after looking around, she did not find the person she was looking for, and a look of disappointment flashed in her eyes. Tang Kai, upon hearing Li Zuanya's words, immediately felt dissatisfied. She had just completed a meditation retreat of 800 years and still she was considered impatient? She was about to retort when she saw Li Xuanyu walk toward the stairs leading to the third floor. I definitely am not impatient. These years, Tang Kai caught up with Li Xuanyu and tried to defend herself. Senior Sister Li. A voice came through, bringing Li Zuanya's steps to a halt. She turned to look and saw Guan, holding a book and walking between two rows of bookshelves. Li Xuanyu felt a little dazed, having not seen him for 10,000 years. Guan seemed totally different from the person in her memories. The Guan in her memory was cautious and reserved, but the Guan before her now was handsome and extraordinary, seemingly an immortal walking amongst mortals. Tang Kai glanced at Guan, her expression one of suspicion. She was astounded at her first sight of Guan. What a handsome man. This was only her personal judgment, and not a case of love at first sight. She had wandered the world and seen many people, but had never come across a cultivator with a presence like Gu Ans. Even her beloved Li Ya did not have an aura to match Gu Ans. What attracted her more to Li Ya was his heroism and loyalty. Guan walked over to Li Xuanyu and asked with a smile, Senior Sister Li, don't you recognize me? Li Xuanyu came back to her senses and said with emotion, Of course, I recognize you. To be honest, the reason I've come here is to look for you. After all, your disciple is also on this continent, and everything about the Qianquan sect is a lot like the Supreme sect. I guessed it had something to do with you. She didn't know that Guan was the supporting Dao sword venerable, but the strength of an Xian proved Gu Ans Dao practice had already surpassed hers. The reason she wanted to find Guan was merely to express her gratitude in person. She was not foolish, and Xin's rescue surely must have been at Gu Ans' behest. I don't have such great capabilities. How about we find an inn to catch up on old times? Guan asked with a smile, and naturally, Li Xuanyu had no objections. Guan did not neglect Tang Kai and introduced himself to her. After exchanging pleasantries, the three of them went downstairs. Noticing Guan spending money to buy the Nine Spirits hero legend, Tang Kai's expression became odd. Now aware that Guan was Xin's master, she held him in high esteem, but she hadn't imagined that such a great cultivator would read such trivial texts. Shouldn't a great cultivator be delving into the great Tao? Li Xuanyu, however, didn't mind. She knew Guan liked reading books. Seeing that Guan still had the same hobby made her feel a sense of closeness, as though the distance between them had narrowed. Later on, the three of them sat down at the closest inn, and after inquiring about each other's experiences, Guan turned the conversation to Li Ya, as Li Ya was the hub of their shared connections. Mention of Li Ya immediately excited Tang Kai, as his fame had already spread to the Nine-Spirit continent. Li Ya, with the Nine Extreme Sacred Heart Sword in hand, might not yet be the world's preeminent sword cultivator, but his strength was already formidable. Coupled with his adventurous spirit, his fame was widespread. People say he's made enemies with the Shaking Light Saint Sex Saint and is being hunted by them. I want to help him, but our sister said I'd just be in the way. Guan, since you are Li Ya's junior brother, can you help him? Tang Kai looked at Guan with a tone full of supplication. She had been through a lot with Li Ya and knew the hardships that lay behind his fame. He must be seriously injured again. Otherwise, it wouldn't have come to this point of enmity. Before Guan could reply, Li Xuanyu spoke up coldly. Tang Kai, don't bother junior brother Gu with Li Ya's affairs. Those were his own choices. Junior brother Gu has already saved us. We owe him a great debt of gratitude. How could we trouble him further? But there are no buts, Li Xuanyu said decisively, leaving Tang Kai with no choice but to nod in resignation. Guan looked at Li Xuanyu, finding her solemnity a bit amusing, and replied, Shaking Light Saint sect is indeed formidable and is said to have the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma, who is of the sixth heaven of the immortal path. They're not easy to provoke. Sixth heaven of the immortal path. Li Zuanya's complexion turned unnaturally pale, while Tang Kai grew tense. Guan comforted them. Don't worry. With the immortal path ultimate treasure, divine exotic city, and the Nine Extreme Sacred Heart Sword in his hands, Senior Brother Li is a man of great destiny. He will surmount the danger. That sword is the world's foremost divine sword. Hearing his words, Li Xuanyu could only nod, while Tang Kai sank into deep worry. Chapter 557, Celestial Spirit Reincarnation, Borrowing Life Amid the Scorching Summer Days. Within the Taoist field of the beginningless, beside a lake, Guan was preaching the great Tao to his disciples, who were listening as if intoxicated. Seeing that everyone had sunk into the enlightenment of the Tao, Guan took out a jade flute from his bosom and admired it closely. Guan, the great Tao you speak of is truly profound and vast, conjuring in me numerous visions. However, I am very curious. Have you actually seen those embodiments of the great Tao? Shen Zhen opened her eyes, looked at Guan, and asked curiously. She was the closest to Guan, and her voice was so soft that it did not disturb the others. Guan glanced at Shen Zhen and said, "The great Tao is everywhere. What have you seen? Where do you wish to go?" With a troubled look, Shen Zhen said, "I saw the universe and the stars, and a white staircase leading to a door." "What kind of door?" "Indescribable, all I can remember now is vague, but I'm sure it was a door." Shen Zhen recounted while speaking. After a pause, she continued to ask, "Guan, do you think those visions I see could be some form of calculation?" Guan smiled at her and said, "That's something you'll have to feel and judge for yourself. It's good that you're thinking about this. Never lose your reverence for the unknown. Always be vigilant, for it is often more beneficial than not." Shen Zhen nodded and said, "I'll be careful. If the great Tao guides me somewhere, I'm certain I won't go." She had heard from Guan about the experiences of An Hao and Zhu Shi, which made her even more vigilant about inexplicable opportunities. The vision she saw while seeking the Tao seemed like a lure, and she didn't want to be deceived. "If you encounter things that are hard to judge, you can also talk to me about them," Guan said, then stood and turned to walk toward the nearby woods. Shen Zhen had no further questions to ask, and she didn't follow Guan's steps. After so many years, she had grown less curious about where Guan went. Now she just wanted to comprehend the great Tao. In its vastness, she could experience all the things she desired. She aspired to become a great cultivator like Guan elsewhere. Guan stepped into the woods and in one step went to another place in the human world. This was a mortal city, bustling streets, with no cultivators seen among the throngs of people, just 2 or 3 transformed demons. However, they did not do any harm but instead were performing their talents in a pavilion known as the Apricot Flower Tower. Guan appeared on the street without drawing the attention of the passers-by, for no one could see him. Even a boy passed through his body, feeling no physical collision. Guan's gaze fell on the side of the street, where a group of beggars squatted in front of a courtyard wall. Among them, a 14 or 15-year-old boy sat with his head down. On closer examination, he had no legs, and only 2 fingers on his right hand, a sight that made it difficult to imagine what kind of torment he had endured. This boy was a reincarnation of the celestial spirit god. This was his 39th time being reincarnated. He was born in a village and before he was 1 year old, his family was raided by bandits, who killed everyone and sold him off. After a life of constant upheaval and numerous struggles, he ended up in such a tragic state. Despite the suffering of the celestial spirit god, Guan had no intention of intervening. Nevertheless, in every life of the celestial spirit god, he would observe. It wasn't to ridicule the celestial spirit god but rather to help him recall some of his previous lives' memories at the time of his death, to let him feel the disparity between immortal gods and mortals. Oddly enough, Guan had not deliberately made the celestial spirit god experience a life of suffering, but most of his lives in the cycle of reincarnation were miserable, and even if born in happiness, he tended to die young, living to a maximum of 70 years in the best-case scenario. On second thought, it was normal, as most mortals have difficulty living past 70. In the scorching summer, this life of the celestial spirit god would end on the flourishing streets, with no one caring about his death. Not until a house servant from a wealthy nearby household dragged his body away, ultimately dumped in the wilderness, and devoured by scavenging wolves. And so, Guan merely stood on the street watching the celestial spirit god, with people coming and going as if in a dream. Search * the novel. F. Iyer. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. This live celestial spirit, named Little Five, had been adopted by an old beggar. He was the 5th child taken in by the old man, hence the name Little Five. At the beginning of the year, the old beggar passed away, and Little Five now followed the eldest child for survival, presently in the throes of illness. To seek medicinal herbs, the eldest was at that moment being beaten by the servants of a medicine shop on another street. This city bustled with such vibrancy. People were drinking and making merry, spilling wine and meat on their tables. Some were reciting poetry and discussing romance under the trees, while others were barely breathing, lying on their beds as their family fought over money for medicine. There were people who went about their routines like zombies, thinking not of the future, but of ending the day's tasks sooner. The countless conditions of sentient beings unfolded before Guan's eyes, his expression unchanging, just quietly watching Little Five. Little Five seemed to feel something and slowly lifted his head. The streets were noisy and busy before his eyes. The close proximity of prosperity felt unattainably distant. In a daze, he saw an additional figure on the street, with people passing right through it, which was very eerie. His hands trembling, he raised them and rubbed his eyes to make sure he wasn't seeing things. Indeed, there was a figure that no one else but he could see. Could that be an immortal god? Xiao Wu spoke weakly, while the two beggars beside him were asleep and didn't hear his murmur, and the other beggars didn't pay attention to him either, because everyone knew he was dying. Guan was surprised that Xiao Wu could see him. He hadn't intended for Xiao Wu to be able to see him. With that thought, Guan willed his presence to deepen, and he disappeared from Xiao Wu's sight in an instant. Seeing that he had disappeared, Xiao Wu instinctively looked in other directions. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't see Guan again. It was just an illusion after all. I knew someone like me couldn't possibly encounter an immortal god. Xiao Wu hung his head low again, continuing to endure the suffering from his illness. Until dusk, a beggar walked over, quivering. It was Xiao Wu's older brother, known as Lao Da. He squatted in front of Xiao Wu, placed the medicinal herb bag stained with blood on the ground, shook Xiao Wu, but there was no response from him. Lao Da's eyes widened with bloodshot eyes, and his right hand trembled as it moved toward Xiao Wu's nose. Soon, he got a fright. He didn't push Xiao Wu away. Instead, he lifted Xiao Wu onto his back and, taking the medicinal herb bag, walked away. Following that, Lao Da carried Xiao Wu on his back and went to all the large and small pharmacies in the city. But no one was willing to treat Xiao Wu. Out of desperation, Lao Da gritted his teeth and carried Xiao Wu out of the city. As night fell, Lao Da didn't look back amidst the fading hustle and bustle behind him and pressed forward with unwavering determination. Lao Da carried Xiao Wu aimlessly forward, not knowing where he should go, but he was unwilling to give up. It was only when he heard a wolf's howl that he finally snapped out of it, by which time he had already lost his way. Don't be afraid, Xiao Wu, Big Brother will definitely save you, definitely? Lao Da murmured to himself softly. He was trying to bolster his own courage. There were always legends in the countryside of immortals living deep in the mountains. The physicians in the human world were not willing to save his brother, so he had to seek out an immortal. He's already dead. Where do you think you're going to take him? Such deep brotherly love. Well, we could save him, but you'll have to give something in return. 3 feminine voices rang out, coquettish and seductive, making one's imagination run wild. Except in the darkness of the night, they seemed sinister and frightening. Fear gripped Lao Da internally, his filthy face unable to hide the terror as he swallowed and asked, "What do I have to give to save my brother? Could it be a demon?" Their voices didn't sound like those of immortals. Lao Da thought so, and without any other options available, he braced himself and inquired further. Suddenly, a cold wind blew from the depths of the forest, forcing Lao Da to instinctively step back. On the trunk of the tree before him appeared 3 white foxes, smirking cunningly, their eyes glowing green in the dark night, which was quite terrifying. Lao Da's legs trembled with fear. The sight of a demon directly drowned his heart in terror, yet he did not throw Xiao Wu down and flee. One of the white foxes chuckled. "Become our servant and we will save him." Lao Da mustered his courage and asked, "Just as a servant?" "As a servant for life, until you die of old age. Oh, by the way, if your brother wants to live, he must borrow someone else's life. Before dawn, you must kill a person and bring them before us. Otherwise, once daylight comes, even if the celestial spirit god himself appeared, there would be no reversing fate." The white fox in the middle sneered coldly, her words sending a chill through Lao Da. Kill someone? Search the novel Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 558 The Legend of Lu Qiuxian. The night was like water. 3 white foxes teasingly stared at the boss, as if looking at prey. Faced with their gaze, the boss was engulfed in an inner struggle, and little 5 on his back had no breath left, his body growing stiffer, which made his heart even more anxious. Although he was a beggar, living at the lowest strata of society, many people humiliated him, but he had never thought about killing anyone. At most he just wanted to beat up those who bullied him. In his view, killing was an unforgivable act, but his younger brother little 5 was still waiting for him to rescue. The boss took a deep breath, he looked up at the 3 white foxes and gritted his teeth. This is it, take my life to save my brother, and let my brother serve you as a servant for a lifetime. Little 5 was disabled, and life was hard to manage by himself. If he could be tied to these 3 demons, perhaps he could find a better way out. Although demons were not as powerful as the immortal gods, they were still not comparable to ordinary people. What if the demons could make little 5 grow legs? Hearing what the boss said, the 3 white foxes were stunned for a moment and then they started giggling. Your brother is a cripple. Is he supposed to serve us, or should we serve him? Mortal, you think too much. Such a coward doesn't even deserve to serve us. Facing the demon's mockery, the boss was not angry, just more nervous and uneasy. He finally had a chance to save his brother. How could he give up? As long as you are willing to go into the city and kill, we can make your brother normal, repairing the physical defects, and there are plenty of evil people in this city. It's not just your brother you'd be saving. One white fox said with a profound meaning, which made a new light shine in the boss' eyes. At the same time, Guan stood under a nearby tree watching this scene. These 3 white foxes were Tier 2 demons, comparable to the Foundation establishment realm, still unable to undergo transformation. What they said was true, hoping the boss would kill the evil people in the city. They dared not act personally, because there were immortal cultivation sects nearby that would capture and kill misbehaving demons, thinking that using the boss as a proxy would be enough to deceive everyone. Guan had no intention of interfering. Even if people died because of this, he wouldn't care. He had rescued too many beings before, now he wouldn't hesitate over the life and death of one person. Of course, if someone truly moved his heart, he would act as he wished. Eventually, the boss agreed. He put down little 5 and then returned to the city alone. As soon as he left, the 3 white foxes surrounded little 5 and began casting spells to protect his soul. Little 5's lifespan and maximum lifespan were not merely 15 years old. Indeed, they had ways to save his life. But from now on, it would be hard for him to sever ties with demons. Guan watched for a while and then disappeared from the spot. Even though there were 3 white foxes altering his fate, little 5's life was destined not to ascend to immortality. This was the punishment Guan had in mind for the celestial spirit god. Guan wouldn't deliberately manipulate the celestial spirit god's birth and life experiences, but would set a limit on his life. The summer night wind still carried a bit of cold. One white fox suddenly shivered and said in a low voice, "Why am I a bit worried, feeling like this might cause trouble?" The fox next to her glared and scolded, "What's there to be afraid of? Are you going to be a concubine for that profligate young master from the city lord's mansion?" "I don't want to. He looks so disgusting. Mainly because he bullies too much, we must kill him, and once that guy comes back, we'll pass on his martial arts to him." "It can only be so." The voices of the 3 white foxes gradually quieted down, and eventually, the woods fell into a silent, oppressive and terrifying stillness. Sand filled the sky, and on a cliff, Zhang Buku with all white hair stood at the edge, shirtless, looking down at the blood lake below. His upper body was muscular, full of power, with blood streaks twisting, making him look even more terrifying. A Buddha head flew out from the sand. It was the Buddha Immortal. Buddha Immortal looked at Zhang Buku, his stone face showing a complicated expression. He was forced to teach Zhang Buku to cultivate, but he hadn't expected Zhang Buku to be so suited to his Tao, far exceeding his expectations. If he could really possess Zhang Buku, maybe he could surpass this life in the next one. Just thinking about it made him regret. Of course, even with several more courage, he wouldn't dare act recklessly. Just the thought of how Guan felt pressing down on his head made him shiver in fear. Zhang Buku turned to look at the Buddha Immortal and asked, "Where is the realm master of the divine exotic realm now?" Buddha Immortal replied, "According to your wish, I have sent him to one great thousand world, and he is now very safe. If I find out you've deceived me, this favor will turn into hatred. Rest assured, since I've already done this much, why would I kill him? He's in the Tai's great world. Once your cultivation ends, I will send you to that great world. There, the opportunities are abundant, and the control of the immortal gods is weak. It's a perfect place for your growth. The Buddha immortal didn't take offense to Zhang Buku's rudeness and replied calmly. Thousands of years had passed, and he had now shifted his mindset, beginning to look forward to Zhang Buku's future. Zhang Buku had such a powerful being behind him, yet they hoped he would mentor Zhang Buku, seeing it as an opportunity. Zhang Buku noted the name, recognizing that this was a presence that even the Buddha immortal feared and not someone he could provoke. 100 years had passed since Xiao Wu's resurrection. Guan hadn't visited him, only occasionally glancing at him. This year, the name of Li Ya had once again spread within the Nine-Spirit continent. Li Ya and the Saint of the Shaking Light Saint sect had arranged a life-and-death duel at the human world peak to settle their karma. The day of the duel had not yet arrived, but the news had spread wildly. In today's vast celestial spirit great world, albeit within the domain formerly belonging to the celestial spirit great earth, both Li Ya and the Saint from Shaking Light Saint sect were world-renowned prodigies. I didn't expect Li Ya to gain such popularity. It seems the world is just a... Back in the day, Li Ya had no power to fight back against me. LV Xian was boasting about his past accomplishments, within Shengtian, Jiang Shi, Chen Chuan, Celestial Cyan, and Tian by listening. Having cultivated in the Taoist field of the beginningless for so many years, their cultivation levels had reached loose immortal, and with the divine skills and spells they possessed, they were full of confidence, feeling that no peer cultivators from the outside world could match them. Tian Bai tilted his head and said, Li Ya has the #1 divine sword in the world. Even if your cultivation level is higher than his, I'm afraid he's not someone you can defeat. LV Xian glared and said, relying on a magical treasure doesn't make a hero. I only believe in my physical body. Just then, an Xian appeared out of nowhere and said, think about what kind of magical treasure you all want. Master is preparing to craft magical treasures for everyone. Upon hearing this, everyone looked at LV Xian. LV Xian's face turned red and he coughed falsely. Why are you looking at me? I've already had ideas. Search the novel Fire. Net website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 559, 10,000 Years of Refining Treasure. Guan's sect hearing LV Xian's words, Celestial Cyan, Jiang Shi, and others couldn't help but roll their eyes. They hadn't been clinging to LV Xian. Instead, they began to discuss the magical treasures they each desired. An Xian was in charge of taking notes. After recording their needs, she would then go to find others. An hour later, an Xian arrived at Guan's courtyard. At the moment, Guan was sitting in front of a great cauldron. His right hand was burning with a 3 pristine true fire as he stared at the flame in his hand. His expression calm and contemplative. Master, I've asked everyone, an Xian said softly, standing next to Guan, holding a stack of paper in her hands. She found it strange. Given her master and the others' abilities, why did she need to run around? Direct communication would do. She figured her master was messing with her, but as a disciple, what could she say? Put it to the side for now, and assist your teacher in what comes next. Guan tossed the 3 pristine true fire beneath the cauldron and then began to speak. As his voice fell, a considerable number of exotic ores and medicinal herbs flew out from his sleeves. And Xin's eyes lit up. She had long wanted to learn artifact refining and yearned for a magical treasure suitable for her. Guan remained seated, casting spells from a distance, transferring materials for artifact refining into the cauldron. An Xian approached the great cauldron, using her divine sense to peek into its contents. Guan was preparing to refine a magic artifact with his own Tao intent, creating a magical treasure unique to his path. It would be a drawn-out process. By the next day at noon, Guan had left an Xian to keep watch while he went to gather medicinal herbs alone. This task was crucial. He had restrained his murderous impulses and greed, so he must not be negligent in harvesting. His annual lifespan income had stabilized around 30 million years. He could continue to improve, but he didn't want to overexert himself or attract too much trouble. The celestial spirit great world had restored order and, for the time being, faced no attacks from forces beyond. For Guan, that was the best kind of life. But destiny was unpredictable, and he couldn't draw the attention of beings from other great worlds to shatter this peace, especially from the celestial court. As long as the heavenly Tao loomed over the celestial spirit great world, Guan couldn't ignore the threat of the celestial court. Time flies like an arrow. In the blink of an eye, 1,000 years passed. At noon, within the Taoist field of the beginningless, Guan lay on a rocking chair, pulling up his attribute panel to check. Name: Guan Sia the Novelier. NET website on Google to access chapters of novels early and in the highest quality. Lifespan: 11, 587/78, 746, 346, 201. Physique: primordial reincarnation, undying body. Cultivation level: balancing heaven, golden immortal realm, perfection. Nearly 80 billion years of lifespan. Guan pondered when to break through. He had already comprehensively improved himself. In theory, he could successfully break through with 100 billion years of lifespan, but there was always the chance of failure. It was better to wait until he had 200 billion years of lifespan to attempt the breakthrough. Guan stood up and sent a message to the celestial demon child. Shortly after, the celestial demon child appeared in the courtyard, looking excitedly at Guan and asking, "Master, is my magical treasure ready?" Since Guan mentioned 1,000 years ago that he planned to refine magical treasures for everyone, they had all been eagerly waiting. The longer the wait, the higher their expectations. Refining a magical treasure with Guan's Tao practice was not a challenge. A lengthy process meant one thing: their magical treasures would be powerful. Guan nodded with a smile, then waved his sleeve, and a white ribbon flew out from the great cauldron. It was as nimble as flowing cloud, quickly landing into the hands of the celestial demon child. The celestial demon child's eyes sparkled, instantly falling in love with the ribbon. "This is the year's colorful cloud ribbon, a Tao treasure that I've refined, imbued with the will of the great Tao. You can meditate on it for your daily cultivation. Your current Tao practice is insufficient to unleash its true power," Guan briefly explained. As his voice dropped, the year's colorful cloud ribbon burst into a bright light, enveloping the celestial demon child and leaving her rooted to the spot. She began to inherit memories, another of Guan's touches, learning how to make the Tao treasure recognize its master. An Exian sat to the side, looking bemused. Over the years, she hadn't seen how the year's colorful cloud ribbon was formed, and for most of the time, Guan was absent, with her being the one to watch over it. She even suspected that the Tao treasure had been completed long ago. When in doubt, she would ask. When facing her master, she never held back. "This is a Tao treasure, a treasure of the great Tao," Guan answered. "You can't see its shaping process. It must be sensed with your Tao. The fact that you haven't discovered it yet means your Tao isn't strong enough." Those words made an Exian feel ashamed. Guan often lectured them on the Tao, and each lecture was a matter of creation, a grand opportunity that cultivators from the outside world couldn't hope to encounter in their lifetimes, yet she failed to grasp the Tao, which filled her heart with shame. Little did she know, their Tao intent was already strong enough. Many divine thought true immortals, even though stronger than them, couldn't match their Tao intent. Guan could tell that everyone in the dojo possessed the ability to fight beyond their realms, but he chose not to elaborate. With a heaven-balancing golden immortal as a teacher, such achievements were to be expected. While the celestial demon child was still assimilating memories, Guan turned and looked into the distance, mumbling to himself, "Still refusing to give up, huh?" Hearing his words, an Exian asked curiously, "Master, who are you talking about?" "Tang Kai." Hundreds of years ago, unable to resist, Tang Kai had gone to find Liya, even calling out to her in the woods outside the dojo and bidding her farewell before she departed. Guan smiled and said, "Not her. I'm talking about a little demon you've never met." Seeing that he was reluctant to elaborate, an Exian didn't press further. In her view, her master, who often went out, must have spread opportunities far and wide, wondering when the Taoist field of the beginningless would gain new people. Time continued to speed up with her thoughts. The news of the celestial demon child receiving a Tao treasure quickly stirred up the dojo. Then, the age-colored cloud silk enveloped the entire sky of the dojo, suppressing all within, immobilizing them, which drove everyone, including an Exian, insane. And Xian even felt that the age-colored cloud silk was second only to her master's fate pen in power. How could she not be excited? Guan maintained a Dao treasure every 1,000 years. The second to receive a Dao treasure was Shen Zhen, and her Dao treasure was called the Void Rebirth Zither, whose strings could shake destiny, causality, and even reincarnation, quite domineeringly. Next was the Blood Prison Great Saint, who received a saber named the Heaven-Breaking Blood Prison Saber, which contained the great Tao of slaughter and hinted at ruling the laws of destruction. Jiang Shi received the Immortal Slaying Flying Saber, another Tao treasure for slaying and fighting, reminding him of the Immortal Slaying Flying Saber from the Investiture of the Gods, which he liked very much. Celestial Xian received the Xian Hong Ling Long Tower, and Tianbai received the White Spirit Exquisite Tower, both Tao treasures not inferior to the others. Together, their might was even greater, named after Yilan's White Spirit Sword and Gu An's Xian Hong Sword. And Shang Tian received the Shaking God Spear, its essence filled with fighting will, second only to the Heaven-Breaking Blood Prison Saber in terms of killing power. Chen Chuan got the Reincarnation Dao Slaying Sword, able to comprehend the path of reincarnation. Guan hoped he could remember his past life on his own. LV Xian received the 12 Extreme Heaven Calming World Bead, 12 silver beads that could each create or devour worlds, encapsulating the path of devouring. And Xian got the 6 Paths Mirror, which could reflect reincarnation and send others into it. During the process of refining Dao treasures, Guan also pondered these great Dao. The 3,000 great Dao are omnipresent, and the Taoist Dominator skill could assist Guan in his contemplation directly. These Dao treasures all had the power to surpass Immortal Path Ultimate treasures and would continue to grow stronger with their owners' achievements in the great Dao, their limits unfathomable. At the very least, these Dao treasures were stronger than the 9 Extreme Sacred Heart Sword in Li Ya's hands. A Dao treasure every 1,000 years. Except for the Ghost Mother of Ephemera, everyone received a Dao treasure, indicating 9,000 years had passed. Guan, now over 20,000 years old, possessed a lifespan of over 340 billion years. The sunlight spilled down as everyone surrounded an Xian, inquiring about her 6 Paths Mirror, her face full of excited smiles. Finally done with work, it's time to make a breakthrough. Guan thought to himself silently. Looking back on the 9,000 years that had passed, even he couldn't help but marvel at how swiftly time had flown. As there were no external threats, these 9,000 years were uneventful, a repetition of days. From refining the age-colored cloud silk, Guan spent 10,000 years crafting Dao treasures for his disciples, and through this process, he continued his cultivation. 10,000 years later, even without using lifespan evolution, his power had significantly improved. Master, aside from you, is there anyone else who can refine Dao treasures? Chen Chuan looked at Guan, asking curiously. Holding the Reincarnation Dao Slaying Sword, even after 2,000 years, he was still enamored with it. The others followed suit, looking at Guan. Guan smiled and said, "Perhaps there are others, but your Dao treasures were forged with my great Dao. In the future, I could help strengthen your Dao treasures and even use them to connect with you." At those words, everyone became even more excited, which meant they could rely on Guan any time. Even if they went out in the future, couldn't they? Master, why not establish a sect? There's no need to recruit many disciples, but at least we could set a banner. In the future, when we introduce ourselves, we can declare which immortal sect we belong to and also add luster to your reputation. Blood Prison Great Saint suddenly suggested, with the others echoing him. This was a plan they had long discussed and were waiting for the right moment to propose. Guan had already heard their discussions over the years and had also been contemplating this matter. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 560. The Primordial Era, Primordial Chaos Body. During the long years of cultivation within the Taoist field of the beginningless, LV Xian, Chen Chuan, and others would fantasize about traversing the human world, and they too wanted to forge a resounding reputation like Li Ya. They felt grateful towards Guan in their hearts, thinking that he should not be forgotten by the people. If Guan did not want to come into the limelight, then as his disciples, it was their duty to help their master propagate his holy name. Everyone looked at Guan with fervent gazes, waiting for him to confirm the name of their sect. Guan pondered and said, "Let's take the name of the dojo for our own, for we shall be called the Beginningless." We have no sect, no door, no clan nor path. Beginningless implies no start and hence is the realm of eternity. I will chase after the realm of eternal immortality, and I hope that you will uphold my will and eventually break free from the shackles of the 3,000 great Tao to become true carefree immortals. Upon hearing this, everyone was ignited with excitement, praising the name one after another. Beginningless is excellent indeed. From now on, I shall introduce myself thus. I am Beginningless LV Sien. Sounds dominant already. Ha ha ha, I also think it's good. Adding sect or gate would have been rather trite. Perhaps many years from now, the Beginningless will become the most mysterious place in the great thousand world, with countless people yearning to pursue it, yet unable to find the way. Fantastic, now that the name of our force is set, I'm even more motivated. From now on, I'll fight for the Beginningless. Listening to the discussions of his disciples, Guan shook his head with a wry smile, and without saying more, turned and left. Millennia passed, and the disciples exchanged knowledge with one another. They had already learned how to use Tao treasures and also understood Guan's attitude towards them, that they would not be misused. Once Guan had left, everyone became even bolder. Chen Chuan excitedly asked, "Tell me, is my reincarnation Tao-slaying sword more powerful, or is Elder Li's 9 Extremes Sacred Heart Sword stronger?" Wuxia whirled. Sight and Exian gave him a look and said, "Don't think about such questions. We should show elderly respect." LV Sien snorted, "What's wrong with being stronger than him? Respect is kept in the heart. Who knows, he might one day depend on us for rescue. I think Tao treasures are stronger than Immortal Path ultimate treasures. If you can comprehend the great Tao within a Tao treasure, you should be able to feel its vast Tao intent. Our beginningless Tao treasures will surely be the most powerful magical treasures." After hearing this, an Exian looked at the 6 paths mirror in her hand with a smile on her face. Seeing her not keeping a stern face, the others also smiled and actively discussed the power of the Tao treasures. Though an Exian was of the same generation as them, she had unconsciously established great prestige, and everyone knew Guan doted on her the most. Even Xin Zhan would not act too willfully in front of an Exian. The ghost mother of ephemera stood at the back of the crowd with a fiery heart. Although she had not obtained a Tao treasure, she felt this was as it should be, given she was not Guan's disciple and had entered the Taoist field of the Beginningless as a prisoner. Guan summoning her was clearly a signal. She wanted a Tao treasure too. Perhaps I shouldn't be methodically completing my tasks. I should be more proactive. The master likes to pick medicinal herbs. Why not find a way to increase the production of medicinal herbs? The ghost mother of ephemera thought so as she looked at the people around her. In the reshaped great thousand world that had seen 10,000 years pass, the human world had taken on a new appearance. The holy court had completely dissolved, and now the war of thousand sects was raging, with no sect showing the dominance to unify the world, for the heavens and earth had become more vast than before. Despite the multitude of sects, this period had gained a unified definition. The primordial era. A new great thousand world was established, where the heavens met the earth and all things bloomed anew. Such a time was known as the primordial, the beginning of everything. The sects that had survived the previous era and made it to the primordial era had all become overlord-level forces. The Supreme Sect was one such power. Now the Supreme Sect dominated the 7 seas and the 3 continents, its influence surpassing even that of the 7-star spirit realm and the star sea congregations of old times. In the 3rd Medicine Valley, which 10,000 years later still held its esteemed position because the sect leader resided in this Medicine Valley. Inside a bamboo forest in the valley, Long Qing, wearing a loose white robe, sat cross-legged on the ground. With unruly hair, he had left his youthful features behind, becoming more composed and unfathomable, looking like a true enlightened being amid the forest. A figure appeared out of nowhere before him. It was Candlestar from the battle court. This reshaped great thousand world seems less like it has been reconstructed, and more like reborn. Many heaven and earth ultimate treasures have emerged between the heavens and earth. Over the years, I have fought over them as well. I didn't expect to encounter the blockade of Profound Yuan Free Immortal. Those old undying beings hidden in the depths of the universe have all returned. Candlestar sighed. Clashing swords with Profound Yuan Free Immortal made me fully realize that this world has truly become a part of the Great Thousand World. Just like the other vast worlds I've been to, there's always trouble brewing. Long Qing didn't open his eyes and said calmly, "What's wrong? Have you lost confidence in uniting Tion E and replacing the battle court? Candlestar chuckled. How could that be? I've already seized that ultimate treasure. I'm currently brewing the body refinement medicinal broth. In at most 100 years, Long Teng will be able to cultivate the primordial chaos physique. The legends of the primordial era are not to be taken lightly. Every major world will go through such a period. The Long Teng he spoke of was Long Qing's son, Long Teng. Long Teng had taken Candlestar as his master, and Candlestar was extremely dedicated to cultivating Long Teng. Their relationship as teacher and pupil was even closer than that of father and son. Long Qing was not pleased to hear this. Since Long Jun had appeared, Candlestar had clearly started to treat Long Qing as though he were dead and thus focused his cultivation efforts on Long Qing's son. Candlestar discerned Long Qing's upset mood, which he thought was caused by the fate he carried. He thus tried to comfort him. Long Jun has been gone for thousands of years. Both the battle court and the silent destruction god emperor have yet to emerge. Perhaps your destiny has changed. Candlestar still shuddered at the memory of the Great War from 10,000 years ago. Such a mighty celestial spirit god was exterminated so easily. He had not seen Gu An's true form, but he guessed that the person was the supporting Tao Sword Venerable. Not just him, most of the beings at the level of free immortals and those in the Tao Fruit realm made the same guess, contributing to the rise of the Supreme Sect. Now, the Supreme Sect already had several divine thought true immortals under Candlestar's manipulation. Aside from those elders who had karmic ties with Guan, the Elder Hall had undergone a complete change of blood. With Long Qing out of sight, Candlestar held the greatest power in the Supreme Sect. Most of the current disciples of the Supreme Sect were born in the primordial era, so they didn't see Candlestar as an outsider. When they joined the sect, Candlestar was already the strongest in the Supreme Sect, and to this day, all disciples look up to him. As for the supporting Tao Sword Venerable, that had become an ethereal legend. But with the existence of the Heaven Repairing Platform, no one doubted the veracity of this tale. Hearing that destiny might have changed, Long Qing opened his eyes. He looked at Candlestar and asked, if the Great Thousand World were to develop to its peak, could it confront the battle court? Candlestar pondered, the battle court controls several Great Thousand Worlds and has risen above them. Of course, the potential of the Great Thousand World is limitless. Some powerful Great Thousand Worlds are even territories the battle court dares not tread. Are there really such Great Thousand Worlds? Long Qing asked with raised eyebrows. Having recovered the memories of his past life, he knew well the might of the battle court. However, he had been born in this universe in his past life and was not familiar with other Great Thousand Worlds. Of course. Hongmeng, 9 Extremes, Taisher, Taiqing, Taiwei. These 5 Great Thousand Worlds are places the battle court dares not overstep. Although I haven't been to them, the Lord of the War Court is extremely wary of these worlds. Moreover, besides the Great Thousand Worlds, there are other planes of existence. They may not exist according to world rules, but they too have nurtured incredibly potent forces. Candlestar paused and said with heavy emphasis, although the battle court is strong, it is far from the strongest. As long as you maintain hope, your limits will certainly surpass theirs. I've always felt that the Long clan is at the core of the battle court. Sooner or later, the Long clan will surpass the battle court and reclaim its power. Upon hearing this, Long Qing's eyes lit up with spirit. Just then, a woman appeared out of thin air beside them. Father, Yitsong has returned, seeking justice for his father. He wields an immortal path ultimate treasure and has already penetrated the first sea domain. He might arrive at Taitsong continent today. The woman was Long Qing's daughter, Long Ya, and her expression was complex when she mentioned Yitsong. Long Qing said pensively, in the end, he has grown up. 9,000 years ago, I felt his destiny pattern was extraordinary. Candlestar, however, said dismissively, what does having an extraordinary destiny pattern matter? He shouldn't have trampled on the face of the Supreme Sect. Personal grudges could be discussed privately. Let him come. I'll make him understand that even with his exceptional talent, 9,000 years of cultivation is far from enough to shake the foundation of the Supreme Sect. Long Qing hesitated for a moment and then said, don't harm his life after all, he was once my disciple. Some misunderstandings, I think, should be discussed face to face. With a huff, Candlestar vanished on the spot. Once he had gone, Long Ya let out a sigh of relief. She came up to Long Qing and whispered, "Father, I've heard that Yi Tsong has cultivated the primordial chaos body, astonishing the heavens and startling the ghosts. Even the saintess of the Guangyuan saint sect admires him. Not only is his cultivation level formidable, but he also has a powerful backing now." Long Qing glanced at her and retorted, "So what's your point?" Long Ye glared and said, "What point can I have? I'm only reminding you that I did let him down, but you were the one who truly pushed him away from the Supreme Sect. You cared too much for the Supreme Sect, causing your disciple to suffer." With that, Long Ye stomped away. Long Qing wasn't angry. He looked up slightly towards the bamboo forest above and murmured, "Master, faced with such a dilemma, what would you choose?" You practiced qi absorption cultivation for 5,900,000,000 years. You forcefully assaulted the Tai Ching Golden Immortal Realm using your great achievement with the Taoist Dominator skill. Started crossing the tribulation. You endured the 3,000 Golden Immortal Breaking Tao tribulations. Crossing the tribulation succeeded. Your cultivation level broke through to the early stage of Tai Ching Golden Immortal Realm. You practiced qi absorption cultivation for 100 billion years. Your cultivation level improved. A massive amount of Tao spiritual qi immediately surged towards Guen. He didn't stop but continued to invest lifespan. The lifespan required to move from the early stage to the mid-stage of the Tai Ching Golden Immortal Realm far exceeded his imagination, costing him 200 billion years of lifespan. That was truly frightening. However, thinking of the 9 Heavens Cyan bird who was only in the early stage of Tai Ching Golden Immortal Realm despite being over 200 billion years old, he felt more at ease. After all, this was the Tai Ching Golden Immortal, a realm unimaginable to the beings of the celestial spirit great world. He continued to invest lifespan until his cultivation level reached the perfection of Tai Ching Golden Immortal Realm. From early stage to perfection, he had spent nearly 100 billion years of lifespan altogether. And he still had over 1.8 billion years of lifespan left. Meanwhile, anomalies began to appear in the desperate celestial tomb. Tao spiritual qi surged from all directions, forming devastating tornadoes, and runes appeared intermittently in the sky, akin to thunder, oppressively intense. Guen turned his gaze back to the distant huge palace. That trace of eerie presence he had caught earlier reappeared. His eyes intently focused on that half-open giant door, behind which was darkness, ominously severe. After a while, as Guen basked in the luminance of the great Tao, he squinted because he saw a figure walking out from that door. The figure was as large as an ordinary person, seeming minuscule like dust within the doorway. From its shape, it seemed to be a person. He became more transcendent, exuding an aura of unparalleled dominance. Tai Ching Golden Immortal, the pinnacle of the Golden Immortal Tao Fruit and also the 6th realm of the Tao Fruit realm, the Great Tao told Guen that very few beings reached this layer of the realm, a domain even the Great Tao couldn't entirely restrict. Guen could feel that his Golden Immortal Tao Fruit had reached its limit. Another breakthrough would grant him even greater favors, and his Tao Fruit too would welcome a new transformation. The Tao spiritual qi continued to pour into Guan's body, the potent power of the great Tao surrounding him, as if protecting his breakthrough. Guan's gaze once again turned towards the distance. The giant palace gate no longer bore sight of Sin. He felt somewhat wistful, a feeling that left him confused. His intuition told him that he had some connection with Sin, a connection he couldn't recall, possibly because it pertained to the future. He felt it was likely related to lifespan reincarnation. Perhaps Sin had some connection with one of his reincarnation bodies from a past life. From the moment he saw the desperate celestial tomb, he had this sense, as if something here was waiting for him, something he was compelled to face. Guen gazed at the massive palace while lost in contemplation. Even though he had successfully made a breakthrough, he couldn't fully decipher the causality of the desperate celestial tomb. However, he was certain that the entire world was a celestial tomb, burying countless great powers' causality. He could even envision the scenes from before their deaths. The desperate celestial tomb seemed quiet but was truly terrifying. Without the lifespan barrier, just 1 hour in the tomb would see Guen eaten away by mysterious forces within, making escape impossible. Whatever this force was, Guan couldn't tell, and he even sensed that this force was no less formidable than the heavenly Tao. Time continued to pass. Guan had reached perfection in the Tai Ching golden immortal realm, but the strange phenomena within the desperate celestial tomb persisted. Aside from Sin, he detected no other presences, as if the desperate celestial tomb housed only Sin, a living spirit. Once his cultivation level stopped growing, Guan stood up, choosing to teleport back. As for the confusion brought about by Sin, he decided to let time provide the answers, for with the lifespan breakthrough, there was always the possibility of returning in the future. After a while, Guan reappeared inside the hidden spirit palace. He pulled up his attribute panel, and just the breakthrough of the lifespan barrier alone had cost him 70 billion years of lifespan, leaving him with around 100 billion years. That's fine, there's lifespan left. After giving the deep-sea dragon carp that had already begun its cultivation practice a glance, Guan disappeared on the spot. He didn't return to the Taoist field of the beginningless but took one step to arrive at the outer sect city of the Supreme Sect. It had been tens of thousands of years since he last returned to the Supreme Sect. Compared to the last era, the Supreme Sect was even more prosperous. Even the outer sect city had been expanded, and it was more vast than the sect's main city of before. Guan appeared out of thin air amid the crowd in the streets without attracting anyone's attention. Even when he appeared in front of the passing disciples, they only felt that he had an extraordinary demeanor and were not confused about his sudden appearance, which was the effect of his Tao intent. He could influence people's perception, even manipulate their minds. The Supreme Sect was bustling today. As Guan strolled around, he listened to the discussions among the Supreme Sect disciples. I heard that Grand Elder Zhu Xing himself took action and still couldn't subdue Yitsong. Is the primordial chaos body really so domineering? Not exactly. Yitsong wields an immortal path ultimate treasure, and clearly, there is a prominent figure behind him. It is said that the Guangyuan Saint sect supporting him possesses great powers that transcend the 9 heavens of the immortal path. The Supreme Sect won't be overwhelmed, right? Yitsong was also once a disciple of our Supreme Sect, but now he has become our enemy. What exactly happened back then? Guan listened to these discussions without paying Yitsong any mind. The new era would give birth to new talents, especially since the current great heaven and earth are far stronger than in the last era. Before the great thousand world was reshaped, thousands of great heaven and earths were scattered across the universe. From ancient times to the present, entities wanting to transcend the free immortals realm would leave the great heaven and earth to seek opportunities in the universe, because their own heaven and earth could not help them reach higher realms. Now the great thousand world has been restored to its original state, and the heavenly Tao has re-emerged. Opportunities are everywhere, and more great powers are returning. Some come from the river of the great Tao, others from reincarnation. There are myriad ways, making the overall strength of the celestial spirit great world rapidly increasing. As for the celestial court, perhaps standing too high, they have not noticed this, and the battle court is even more elusive. Returning to the Supreme Sect, Guan mainly felt nostalgic and wanted to come back and take a look. He walked slowly, admiring the street scenes along the way, and before he knew it, he had arrived in front of the library pavilion. This time he didn't step inside. Compared to his last visit, the library pavilion had become majestically imposing, and he felt a sense of unfamiliarity. Old acquaintances kept surfacing in Guan's eyes, bringing a smile to his face. Chapter 563. The dominant ancestor gazing at the distant and majestic Supreme Sect, Yitsong's eyes brimmed with nostalgia as he murmured to himself, I've finally come back. Compared to before, it indeed looks more like a holy land of the human world. A weathered voice emerged from the ancient Azure Tower. Regarding the Supreme Sect, I too am quite interested. What kind of sect is it that could attract the protection of supporting Tao Sword Venerable? Heaven supporting ancestor. Yitsong replied. But the supporting Tao Sword Venerable has already left the Supreme Sect. Perhaps even he has grown tired of it. He had visited the Heaven Repairing Platform and felt the vast sword intent of the supporting Tao Sword Venerable. Thus, he had long been an admirer of the Venerable. Everything should have a limit. Do not be too extreme, Heaven supporting ancestor said with emphasis. Yitsong did not reply, his eyes only growing more complex. He recalled the scene before he left the Supreme Sect, arguing with his master in the Third Medicine Valley, insisting he hadn't harmed his fellow disciples. Even though his senior sister testified for him, their master remained unconvinced. To appease the rage within the sect, his master had him leave the supreme sect first. After his departure, his sister was murdered. She was his only kin, whom he swore to protect in front of their parents' tombstones. Knowledgeable of this truth, he felt as though the sky had collapsed. He sought justice from his master but was stone-walled, and to this day, that vengeance had not been claimed. He hated his master for not taking a stand for him, and he hated the supreme sect even more. Although it was called a holy land, it was really dominated by influential families, and without a powerful backing, it was hard to gain a foothold. This time, he was determined to demand justice. After obtaining justice, he planned to leave far behind, venturing into a vaster world, never to return in this lifetime. Wuxia World. Sight Wuxia World. Sight. Of course, there was another thought in his mind. That was to see his senior sister one more time. Thinking of his senior sister, the chill in his eyes eased. How dare you, Yitsong? As a disciple of the Supreme Sect, do you truly intend to betray your own sect? A majestic voice rang out, thunderous and filled with divine might. Yitsong did not reply. Instead, quickening his pace, his aura suddenly burst forth. Mana gathered behind him, forming a Dharma aspect of towering mountains and rivers, sun and moon shining brightly, and vast rivers rushing, from which the essence of heaven and earth gushed out. The clouds ahead were pierced through as cultivators of the Supreme Sect, armed with magical treasures, rushed out, rapidly surrounding Yitsong, ready for battle. Rumble. The outer sect city shook, and Guan watched as the city-protecting array rose. Pedestrians on the streets hurried along, disturbed by Yitsong's arrival. Guan turned and headed toward the heaven-repairing platform. He could foresee that Yitsong would not bring disaster to the Supreme Sect. Once Yitsong met Longqing and they, as master and disciple, broke ties, Yitsong would completely sever his karma and then truly embark on his own path in life. The primordial chaos body was no simple matter. A notch above Zhu Zai's primordial cause and effect body. Of course, that was just the physique. The potential of a cultivator still depended on their comprehension. The feud between Yitsong and Longqing amused Guan, but he did not support either of their perspectives. Suddenly, he thought of Ji Xiaoyu, who had also severed her familial ties. Such were the matters of the human world, always with its imperfections. Ji Xiaoyu had long returned to the yin-yang immortal domain, which was not part of the great heaven and earth, and remained in the cosmic void of the universe. Guan occasionally kept an eye on Ji Xiaoyu, who was striving to reach the Dao fruit realm. Despite the news of the reshaping of the Great Thousand World, Ji Xiaoyu had no intention of coming back to see Guan. Guan could hear her aspirations. She wanted to reach the same realm as Guan before she would meet him again. Naturally, he respected her competitive spirit. For the human world, 10,000 years was a long time, but for Ji Xiaoyu, especially in seclusion, it felt short, so she did not feel it had been long since she saw Guan. Thinking of Ji Xiaoyu, Guan then thought of Yilan. Having entered reincarnation for so long, Yilan had not yet reincarnated in the celestial spirit great world. Guan decided to spend time looking for her next. With the Dao Destruction Destiny Seal, as a Tai Ching Golden Immortal, finding Yilan should not be difficult for Guan. As Guan thought this, he walked down one street after another. He finally arrived in front of the Heaven Repairing Platform. The Heaven Repairing Platform maintained its original appearance, with many figures on it. Zhua Yijian was still guarding the heaven-splitting axe, sitting cross-legged in mid-air, exuding a celestial demeanor. The pressure of the immortal path ultimate treasure enveloped outer sect city, but Zhua Yijian kept his eyes closed, an air of calmness that would not change even if the heavens fell. Looking at Zhua Yijian, Guan felt reassured. Zhua Yijian was definitely the most devoted person to him. Even more devout than profound mysterious Zhenren from the Mountain God Temple. Unless his family faced trouble, he had guarded the heaven-repairing platform for over 20,000 years, protecting the honor of supporting Dao's sword venerable. Guan also had not treated him unfairly, occasionally using Dao intent to guide him in sword enlightenment. Now, Zhua Yijian was also in the loose immortal realm. His sword Dao achievement not much less than Chen Chuan. Once the inheritance of the heaven-splitting axe was handed over, Guan would give Zhua Yijian a chance to follow him. Guan had steeds, disciples, and demon pets, but he lacked a sword attendant by his side. At this moment, a figure appeared out of nowhere in front of the heaven-splitting axe, and the disciples who were queuing up were about to verbally abuse the newcomer, but upon recognizing who it was, they hastily bent over to salute. The visitor was none other than the sect leader of the supreme sect, Long Qing. Long Qing paid no attention to the surrounding disciples. He gazed at the heaven-splitting axe, remaining silent. Zhua Yijian was still meditating mid-air. He glanced at Long Qing and then closed his eyes again. With a pat on the shoulder from the supporting Dao sword venerable and inheriting the sword intent, Zhua Yijian held a very high status in the supreme sect. Even when facing Long Qing, he could act as a senior, and Long Qing did indeed respect him. Boom, boom, boom. The distant rumbling of thunder grew louder and louder. The oppression belonging to the immortal path ultimate treasure was approaching. Candlestar appeared out of nowhere beside Long Qing and said solemnly, "Behind him, there is someone with a higher cultivation level than me. The supreme sect cannot stop him. He is the foremost cultivator of the supreme sect, and below him, there is a huge gap in cultivation level." Hearing his words, Long Qing's expression did not change. Candlestar wanted to say more, but he suddenly turned his head. The city-protecting array of the outer sect city shattered abruptly, and a rainbow light came crashing down from the sky, forcing Candlestar to raise his palm and protect Long Qing and the surrounding disciples with his own mana. As the light dissipated and the Jin Qi overflowed, Yi Tsong revealed himself, with cracks appearing on the platform under his feet and stones flying. Zhua Yijian opened his eyes. His gaze fell on the spot beneath Yi Tsong's feet, his sword brows furrowing tightly. Holding a green ancient tower, Yi Tsong ignored Candlestar. His gaze fell on Long Qing's back, and he said, "Master, long time no see." Long Qing slowly turned around. Facing his former disciple, his expression was calm, devoid of any emotion. Their eyes met, each seeing only the other. "What do you want?" Long Qing asked. Yi Tsong responded, "I seek justice. I want you, master, to publicly condemn the Cui family and avenge my sister." Long Qing said nothing, only quietly looked at him. Yi Tsong slightly tilted his chin upward, a cold light twinkling in his eyes. He said with a sneer, "It seems that after 9,000 years, the status of the Cui family in the supreme sect has risen ever higher. Master, you also can't bear to deal with them, can you?" Long Qing stared at him and said, "The one who murdered your sister was already executed. Do you really want the entire Cui family to join your sister in death? Do you know how many people are in the Cui family, and what the supreme sect would lose without them?" Yi Tsong stepped forward. The green ancient tower shone with a dazzling light. A strong wind rose from the ground, and his black robe fluttered intensely, enhancing the oppressive force he displayed. "He is dead, but my sister, as a disciple of the supreme sect, died quietly. Is that really right? Moreover, that person was just a pawn. Who truly wanted to harm my sister, master, do you really not know?" Yi Tsong pressed aggressively, the aura of the green ancient tower making the heaven-repairing platform tremble. Candlestar couldn't help but yell out, "Enough! That member of the Cui family has long left the supreme sect. Do you expect the supreme sect to spend manpower to hunt him down? How vast is the world for your sister? How much should the supreme sect have to sacrifice for you to be satisfied?" The Cui family allowed the mastermind to escape and had the murderer executed. The supreme sect indeed had no way to deal with them, especially since the Cui family helped develop the sect and now counted among the top 3 families within the sect. Candlestar often encountered such contradictions. What he could do was to have the murderer pay with his life, but it was impossible to completely eradicate them because the development of power needed to consider benefits. With this loud yell, the aura of profound Yuan-free immortal surged toward Yi Tsong, making him slide backward. A phantom jumped out from the green ancient tower. This was an old Taoist with white hair. The heaven-supporting ancestor hovered in the air, looking down at Candlestar and said, "Fellow Taoist, you should not belong to this great thousand world. Why are you so stubborn about the rules of the human world? If you consider interests, do you think it is worth offending me and a primordial chaos body for a family that oppresses the weak?" Seeing him appear, Candlestar's expression darkened and he said, "I want to ask you too, with your high level of Tao practice, do you really think his stubborn nature won't bring him great disaster?" The heaven-supporting ancestor had no expression on his face and said, "This is his only request in this life, and as his teacher, I must help him. In the human world, a day as a teacher, a lifelong father. In the great thousand world, a teacher should protect his disciple more. I do not care what happens to him in the future. I just want to support him now. Hearing these words, Long Qing's expression changed. Zhua Yijian looked at the heaven-supporting ancestor. He could feel the other's strength, but he was not concerned. The supporting Dao sword venerable had left many years ago, but Zhua Yijian always felt that the old man was still watching over the supreme sect. Before you left the supreme sect, did you get less cultivation resources than I did? Despite conflicts with that disciple from the Cui family, you both vied for the same opportunity. He died. Wouldn't the Cui family think of you? Isn't it because of your lack of foresight? This handsome man was Long Qing's son, Long Tang, and he spoke with the fierce momentum of a wild beast. He stared intently at Yitsong and said, "All you know is hatred, but what about the grace the supreme sect has shown you? Because of hatred towards one person, one family, you would involve the entire sect? Do you really think you are without guilt? Since you hold your sister in such high regard, why didn't you consider her when you were fighting? Did you think we are obligated to guard your sister for life, watching over her every moment?" These successive interrogations made Yitsong furrow his brows. Heaven-supporting ancestor did not speak further. He had no personal grievance with the supreme sect. He wanted to see how Yitsong would respond. In his view, Yitsong should experience such a confrontation and come to a clear understanding of himself. The people who have been kind to you, you only demand more. By what right do you act this way? Long Tang said forcefully, and even though heaven-supporting ancestor and immortal path ultimate treasure were mighty, he showed no fear, and even took a step forward while speaking. Seeing Long Tang's stance, Candlestar revealed a smile on his face. Even though Yitsong had cultivated the primordial chaos body, in Candlestar's eyes, he still didn't measure up to Long Tang. Feel it's unfair? When Yitsong was the favored one by Long Qing, did Yitsong ever consider how Long Tang felt being neglected? Granted, Long Qing was somewhat biased in his manner and relationships. The closer they were, the more he may have taken them for granted, mainly because his energy and resources were limited. In his view, there was no need to make a big effort to win over his own children. Perhaps, due to a lifetime of drifting from one life to the next, he cared deeply about how outsiders felt under his command. Candlestar didn't think such a fault was a big deal. The present issue wasn't about what Long Qing did wrong. It was that he wasn't as strong as heaven-supporting ancestor. If he was stronger, would he have allowed heaven-supporting ancestor such insolence? More and more people appeared on the heaven-repairing platform, persuading Yitsong, who had once shown peerless talent. It was too much of a pity for such a genius to become the supreme sect's enemy, especially when the conflict could be resolved. Why go to such lengths to settle the score? Yitsong watched his former sect friends and teachers, feeling somewhat swayed in his heart. But whenever he thought of his sister's death, he just couldn't let go. The very reason he had left the supreme sect with peace of mind was his belief that Master would take care of his sister. You can avenge the dead, but you should also cherish the living. Yitsong saw heaven-supporting ancestor pressed to the ground, unable to even turn around to look at him, and this filled him with fear. Guan looked so young but gave off an unfathomable aura. He nervously asked, "And who are you?" He had voiced the question on everyone's mind. Afraid that Yitsong might offend Guan, Long Qing hastily barked, "Aren't you going to kneel and kowtow to your ancestor?" Ancestor? Yitsong stood there stunned, along with Long Tang, Long Ye, and the other members of the Long family. This person was Long Qing's master? Wait, wasn't Long Qing's master? More and more people started to realize this point. Some gasped, while others trembled and knelt straight on the ground. Yitsong also came to the realization of Gu An's identity, his mind buzzing. He stood still, unsure of what to do. Gu An's left hand lifted, and with a wave through the air, a man appeared beneath his hand, his shoulder grasped by Gu En. This man was handsomely dressed, his face handsome, but it carried a hint of malevolence. His expression was baffled, obviously startled by the sudden turn of events. When he saw Yitsong, his face greatly changed. Yitsong's notoriety spread far and wide, and he had always dreaded encountering Yitsong. Upon seeing him, Yitsong's eyes instantly reddened, his murderous intent irrepressible. You! Chui Xianlin had just opened his mouth when he was suppressed by a force. Guan couldn't be bothered to listen to their dispute. Through causal calculations, he could understand the truth. Chui Xianlin's brother fancied Long Ye, but Long Ye was close to Yi Tsong, leading to Chui Xianlin's brother warning Yi Tsong several times in private, which resulted in a grudge between the two men. The reason Chui Xianlin's brother died was that he attacked Yi Tsong and, in a twist of fate, was killed by a demon beast. After Yi Tsong left, Chui Xianlin returned to Supreme Sect only to discover his brother's death. He wanted Yi Tsong to suffer the same pain. The Chui family was also in distress. They were wary of Long Qing and Candlestar. Otherwise, they would not have sent Chui Xianlin away. Whether it was the Chui family or Yi Tsong, both paid a price. Supreme Sect had also discussed this matter with the Chui family, and ultimately, it was left in the past. But the Chui family never dared let Chui Xianlin return due to Candlestar's domineering actions. Guan stared at Yi Tsong and said, "You're avenging your sister, and your master helps you, that's all fine. But you must also allow your master's ancestor to help him. What do you think?" Yi Tsong, overwhelmed, was even more unsure of what to do. The thought that the person before him was the myth of Supreme Sect threw his mind into turmoil. Long Qing quickly approached Guan and said, "Master, Kanger is just a bit impulsive. It's all my fault as his master." From a distance, they saw Zhua Yijian sitting under a tree, stupidly smiling at a teapot on the table as if possessed. Long Qing hesitated for a moment but still walked towards Zhua Yijian. Yi Tsong subconsciously looked around, searching for his ancestor. After taking revenge and reflecting on his ancestor's power, he felt shocked. He had thought heaven-supporting ancestor was the strongest, but heaven-supporting ancestor was powerless before his ancestor. This incident also awakened him. If he hadn't met his ancestor that day, he might have already died. He began to admire and aspire after his ancestor, a person so powerful yet not overbearing, fair, the kind of person he wanted to become. Seeing Long Qing and his disciple approaching, Zhua Yijian composed himself, resuming his inscrutable demeanor. Long Qing approached him and bowed, asking, "Senior, where has my master gone? Has he left any instructions?" Zhua Yijian stood up and said, "As for where he has gone off to, I can't investigate that, and he didn't leave any message." After hearing this, Long Qing frowned. Zhua Yijian spoke with a meaningful tone. "Sect leader, the next time you visit the heaven repairing platform, don't just focus on the heaven-splitting axe. Actually, the most important thing on the heaven repairing platform isn't the legacy, nor the sword intent, but the 2 words of righteous Tao he left behind." What is the righteous Tao? Different people have different understandings, but I think what's right is right, what's wrong is wrong. The righteous Tao should lead the moral climate of the human world. Before the sound of his voice faded, Zhua Yijian had already disappeared from the spot. After listening, Long Qing fell into silence. Yi Tsong, looking at Long Qing's back, his eyes full of shame. After being scolded and looking back at his master's actions, he suddenly felt that being a master was the hardest. Yi Tsong began to examine his own heart. What kind of person was he really? Did he deserve the 2 words righteous Tao? Heaven-supporting ancestor taught him that if one does not think for oneself, heaven and earth will annihilate them. Immortal cultivation is about striving, but seeing the ancestor today, he suddenly felt that cultivators must still have some convictions and principles. In thousands of years, he had seen countless powerhouses, but in terms of demeanor, no one could compare to his ancestor. The ancestor had only said a few words, but now that he thought back, each word was filled with deep meaning. Under the old tree, Long Qing and Yi Tsong, each harboring their own thoughts, were reflecting on their own actions and pasts. Guan returned to the Taoist field of the beginningless and resumed his uneventful lifestyle, not caring about how Long Qing would deal with Yi Tsong. Even if the Supreme Sect were to be destroyed, he didn't want to bother. At the age of 2, the Jinlan Immortal Mansion suffered an attack from space demons. Your eyes were gouged out, and misfortune was cast upon you. The powers in the mansion deduced that you could not live past 20 years. Unwilling to accept this fate, guided by the Pavilion Master, Your parents decided to take you to Ling Mountain. What a tough start. Couldn't live past 20? Guan immediately tensed up. From misty immortal court to Ling Mountain. Could Eternal Live's parents reach it within 20 years? He began to look forward to Eternal Live's ability to activate lifespan evolution, perhaps to break free from fate. At the age of 89,002, you succeeded in crossing the tribulation and became a Taoist Zong Zizai immortal. You began to solidify your cultivation level. At the age of 90,000, the Celestial Buddha agreed for you to leave Ling Mountain, and before saying goodbye, he entrusted you with a task to take a disciple from the misty immortal court, saying they would certainly agree. You left Ling Mountain with doubts. At the age of 90,134, you encountered a group of cultivators ascending to Yellow Heaven. They were entangled by evil spirits. You helped them, and knowing you were heading in the same direction, the group of cultivators decided to travel with you. Seeing others follow, Guan knew trouble was coming. Afterward, he frequently encountered problems, but Guan never faced a choice. Perhaps these troubles posed no threat to Yongsheng. At the age of 90,152, you ventured into a cosmic domain, and suddenly, great Tao True Fire emerged from all directions submerging you. You couldn't escape the universe, only able to resist with your mana. The great Tao True Fire grew stronger, continuously engulfing people. You protected the living with the red dust Buddha beads, while you yourself endured using the Bodhi golden body. At the age of 90,153, your red dust Buddha beads were refined, the protected cultivators all were refined, leaving only you relying on the Bodhi golden body to desperately endure. Suddenly, a figure came from the deep darkness, self-proclaimed as the profound demon emperor. You sensed the presence of the immortal emperor's eye on him, knowing he was the one who took your eye, and thinking of your parents' tragic death. You attacked in rage. Due to the huge gap in cultivation level, you were no match for the profound demon emperor. Just as he was about to annihilate you, a golden palm shattered the universe and repelled the profound demon emperor. You turned back and recognized it as your teacher, the Celestial Buddha's hand. No matter how you called to the Celestial Buddha, he did not respond to you, and you could only leave this shattered universe. Chapter 567. Stealing Heaven. Immortal Sect, Emperor of Eternal Life. Seeing the Celestial Buddha take action, Guan suddenly thought of Yang Xian's master, the ancestor of 10,000 swords. Even for a life filled with hardships, there are always people who can light it up, bringing hope and warmth. The prompt continued. After his defeat by the profound demon emperor, the Emperor of Eternal Life temporarily gave up on retrieving the immortal emperor's eye. He began to head towards the misty immortal court to fulfill the task assigned by the Celestial Buddha. At the age of 91,181, you returned to the misty immortal court. You went back to the Jinlan immortal mansion, met with the pavilion master who was deeply saddened by your parents' death, began to console you, and you mentioned the task given by the Celestial Buddha. The pavilion master didn't refuse but enthusiastically took you to the misty immortal palace. Along the way, you learned about the relationship between Ling Mountain and the Misty Immortal Court. The current lord of the Misty Immortal Court is a close friend of the Celestial Buddha, who had once sent disciples to train in the Misty Immortal Court, and now it was time to take disciples from the Misty Immortal Court to train at Ling Mountain. You met the Misty Tao Emperor, feeling that this person was as profound and mysterious as the Celestial Buddha. After some consideration, you took Fairy Yaoxian, a prodigy of the Misty Immortal Court, as your disciple. You then left with Yaoxian towards Ling Mountain. At the age of 91,182, you and Yaoxian arrived at the path of the Great Tao. You found a spirit lake and decided to seek enlightenment there. Seeing the Emperor of Eternal Life taking Yaoxian with him, Guan had a bad premonition. He always felt that Yaoxian would die and that it would profoundly affect the Emperor of Eternal Life. Fortunately, things did not develop as he had anticipated. Decades later, both of them successfully returned to Ling Mountain, and the entire process did not give Guan a chance to choose. However, the same year they joined Ling Mountain, Yaoxian expressed her love to the Emperor of Eternal Life. Unlike the Emperor becoming a disciple of Ling Mountain, Yaoxian was just there to cultivate, and once she left, she would revert to being a disciple of the Misty Immortal Court, so the rules of Ling Mountain could not restrict her. This time, Guan was faced with a choice. Upon meticulously recalling past experiences and ascertaining that the Emperor of Eternal Life had not developed feelings for the misty Tao Emperor, he rejected Yeoxuan's love. Wuxia World. Sight, you rejected Yeoxuan's affection. She was neither angry nor sad but instead chuckled, claiming that she would eventually shatter your Buddhist heart. After Yao Xian left, you turned back to the Bodhi sacred tree and asked the tree about your inner feelings. The years of cultivation continued. Even without the ability to snatch lifespan, the cultivation speed of the Emperor of Eternal Life was rapid. Although there were no choices to make nor severe trials to face next, Guan still watched with great interest. At 300,000 years old, he became the profound Yuan-free immortal. At 1,000,000 years old, he became the heaven-encompassing free immortal. Without facing reincarnation tribulations, purely by cultivating beneath the Bodhi sacred tree, with frequent visits and praises for his exceptional talent from the Buddhas. At 1,004,236 years old, Fairy Yaoxian came to visit you. She said she was planning to venture onto the Taoist Emperor's path to achieve the title of Taoist Emperor. Knowing you are also pursuing this path, you chose to go with her. At 1,004,250 years old, you and Fairy Yaoxian arrived at the path of the Great Tao. Fairy Yaoxian took out a magical treasure bestowed by the misty immortal court to pursue the celestial Tao destiny. As you sought and debated the Tao, you discovered that Yeoxuan's cultivation was not weaker than yours, which surprised you. At 1,004,367 years old, you and Fairy Yaoxian encountered an attack from a Tao seeker from the Taisha Great World. After a great battle, you noticed a new type of destiny gathering on you, causing a deeper understanding of the Taoist Emperor to emerge. At 1,004,405 years old, Fairy Yaoxian had successfully defeated 10,000 Tao seekers pursuing the title of Taoist Emperor, achieving it ahead of you. At 1,004,423 years old, having defeated 10,000 Tao seekers pursuing the Taoist Emperor title yourself, the celestial Tao destiny gathered around you, and you achieved the title of Supreme Grade Taoist Emperor, soaring in your cultivation. At 1,004,576 years old, you and Fairy Yaoxian unexpectedly met your mentor, the ancestral master Xian Yi. You were delighted. However, during your reunion, the ancestral master Xian Yi suddenly attacked you. With the help of Yao Xian, the two of you united were still no match for him. He captured Fairy Yaoxian, forcing you to dissolve your Bodhi golden body, threatening to obliterate Yeoxuan's divine soul. Whether you choose to dissolve your Bodhi golden body. The prompt finally arrived. Master Xian Yi indeed harbored ill intentions. After all, this man had killed the Emperor of Eternal Live's father and sent the Emperor to Ling Mountain, likely hoping to use Ling Mountain's power to free the Emperor from his misfortune. After so many years of acquaintance with Fairy Yaoxian and venturing the path of the Great Tao together, even without the presence of love, Fairy Yeoxuan's place in the Emperor of Eternal Live's heart was undoubtedly significant. As Guan hesitated, he suddenly noticed Shen Zhan's condition seemed a bit unusual. Shen Zhan was still sitting in front of the great cauldron but was lost in a trance, her eyes empty, as if she were having a terrible nightmare. Guan could hear her heart's voice. Gu Wan's expression turned peculiar, feeling this was absurd. How could this be? He found Shen Zhan's heart's voice was very suitable for the predicament Fairy Yaoxian was in. Could Guan have a reincarnation connection with Fairy Yaoxian? Guan thought for a moment and decided to take a gamble. He bet that the Celestial Buddha would take action. Compared to the profound Demon Emperor, the Celestial Buddha was his true master. You choose to release your Bodhi golden body yourself. Watching you dissolve your Bodhi golden body, Fairy Yaoxian was distraught. She broke through the suppression of the profound Demon Emperor, severely injuring him. Destiny surged insanely towards Fairy Yaoxian on the path of the Great Tao. Several powerful figures rushed to the scene. Seeing the situation turn unfavorable, the profound Demon Emperor tried to flee but was annihilated by Fairy Yaoxian using great divine power. Turning to ashes, man, Fairy Yaoxian, is that fierce? Because you dissolved your Bodhi golden body, your Tao practice was unstable, and your divine soul was disordered. Before you lost consciousness, you saw Fairy Yaoxian flying towards you. At the age of 1,732,121, you finally woke up. You found yourself in a dim world with a bonfire beside you. Shockingly, you saw the figure of the profound Demon Emperor. Instinctively wanting to attack the profound Demon Emperor, You then discovered you had no Dao practice. The profound demon emperor did not kill you but instead explained why he took your immortal emperor's eye. It turns out the immortal emperor's eye is a supreme divine skill from the primordial emperor domain. Even if its possessor perishes, the immortal emperor's eye can reincarnate through reincarnation rules. Your immortal emperor's eye's predecessor had offended the celestial court. Once the immortal emperor's eye matures, the celestial court would notice, so the profound demon emperor took your immortal emperor's eye to protect you. The misfortune on you was not his doing but a remnant curse from your immortal emperor's eye's predecessor, a curse that even reincarnation couldn't dissipate. After knowing the truth, you fell into self-doubt, believing that your parents died because of you. You also found out that the profound demon emperor comes from the primordial emperor domain. Seeing the mark of the immortal emperor's eye on you, he coveted it. It seems, with stealing heaven emperor being annihilated by the celestial court, it might not be a misdeed by the celestial court. Possibly the celestial court was eradicating evil. Later on, more people troubled eternal life, some out of hatred, others wishing to eliminate the power of the stealing heaven emperor to obtain the celestial Tao destiny. Ling Mountain did not relent, continually sending Buddhas after him, which also caused eternal life and the profound demon emperor to be severely injured. In the relentless battles, eternal life declared himself emperor, known as the Emperor of Eternal Life. Many cultivators hearing his title fled immediately, not daring to associate with him. Guan started to worry. With things escalating, the celestial court would be alerted sooner or later, and even if eternal life was powerful, he feared he might die by the hands of the celestial court. At the age of 136,892, you and the profound demon emperor entered the Tai's great world. You interfered with the reincarnation rules, encountering resistance from the Tai's great world. After a fierce battle, you captured the world's realm master of the Tai's great world and stepped into reincarnation, bringing chaos of yin and yang to the Tai's great world. Tai's great world, Guan remembered this realm. The Buddha immortal who was the divine exotic realm master was sent to this great world, which now was boundless, far surpassing the celestial spirit great world. It was unknown whether any legend of eternal life remained in the current Tai's great world. Chapter 568. The True Self of Karma, the Mighty Celestial Buddha. At 136,9102 years old, you stepped out of reincarnation and returned to the Tai's great world, where you were immediately besieged. Using your overwhelming cultivation level, you fought your way out and released all the captured strong figures from Tai's. At 136,9320 years old, you descended upon the Great Hong Great World. You pondered the path of reincarnation of this great world, startling the entire great world. A transcendent being who surpassed the heaven-encompassing free immortal came forth, gravely wounding you. In a critical moment, you used the immortal emperor's eye to escape. Guan stared at the prompts before him, not surprised to see the Emperor of Eternal Life injured. Just the heaven-encompassing free immortal being so presumptuous and still surviving already proved the strength of the immortal Emperor's eye. From the succession of battle achievements, it was evident that the divine skills contained within the immortal Emperor's eye were not only for combat, but also for aiding the Emperor of Eternal Life in his escapes, which piqued his curiosity about the immortal Emperor's eye. He grew increasingly expectant of the memories inherited from the Emperor of Eternal Life. Experiencing the life of the Emperor of Eternal Life firsthand would undoubtedly be more marvelous than words could tell. Constantly battling, constantly getting injured, yet always escaping from the jaws of death, Guan retained his original stance. He would take his revenge upon enemies and avoid making unwarranted enemies. If he encountered injustices, he would have the Emperor of Eternal Life act righteously. Guan believed in the blessings that came from doing many good deeds. By the time the Emperor of Eternal Life was 2 million years old, he had successfully entered the innate golden immortal realm, his strength leaping forward. During his breakthrough, he was attacked yet again, but he managed to succeed in crossing the tribulation amid the fierce battle, an event that resonated through the ages. From then on, the Emperor of Eternal Life was truly grown. He and the profound demon emperor often parted ways but always found each other again, which made Guan think that the profound demon emperor was not simple either. Without the immortal emperor's eye, to follow the Emperor of Eternal Life in his domineering ways and still survive. Perhaps, the profound demon emperor was once a peerless genius of his world. Wuxia World. Site Wuxia World. Site. The great thousand worlds the Emperor of Eternal Life visited were ever increasing. He traveled through reincarnation and probed destiny, encountering few opponents after entering the innate golden immortal realm. At the age of 127, 74633, celestial Tao golden light descended. The celestial court sent celestial gods and celestial generals to attack, sealing the cosmic plane to prevent your escape. You were trapped in a fierce battle. Under the suppression of the heavenly Tao, even the immortal emperors couldn't help you escape. Just as the immortal gods were about to execute you, the celestial Buddha broke through the universe and forcefully rescued you, suffering severe injuries himself. At 127,746,634 years old, the celestial Buddha sent you to the river of cause and effect, instructing you never to step out again. You gazed at the departing silhouette of the celestial Buddha, remaining silent for a long time. At 127,746,656 years old, you encountered the great cause and effect stele within the river of cause and effect, and you began to comprehend the great cause and effect stele. Sure enough, it collided with the celestial court. Guan was surprised that the celestial Buddha could actually contend with the celestial court, even severely wounded, and capable of rescuing the Emperor of Eternal Life, which sufficiently demonstrated the strength of the celestial Buddha. At the same time, the Emperor of Eternal Life also displayed terrifying strength, merely an innate golden immortal, yet able to rival the immortal gods. The celestial spirit gods, celestial extreme gods, and gods of destruction that Guan had previously encountered all possessed the cultivation level of a heaven-balancing golden immortal, and even if that celestial punishment god had just ascended, at the very least, he was of the cultivation level of an innate golden immortal. Keep in mind that the Emperor of Eternal Life did not rely on the ability to evolve through lifespan. His greatest reliance was the immortal Emperor's eye. At 127, 747, 5897 years old, through the great cause and effect stele, you discovered that you were not your true self, which plunged you into confusion. At 127,747,004 years old, you accepted the cause and effect of the self, feeling that such truth might actually be a good thing. You could not save Fairy Yao Xian, but a stronger version of you might be able to. You took out a strand of hair that Fairy Yao Xian had left behind and began to pursue its cause and effect. At 127,901,546 years old, you located the positions of other identities within the cause and effect. Unable to find the true self, you took Fairy Yao Xian's hair and merged it into the great cause and effect stele, choosing to fall within the great cause and effect stele. You have perished, and your path has dissipated. Reincarnation has ended. The end? Guan had not expected that the life of the Emperor of Eternal Life would end in such a manner. He did not leave the Taoist field of the beginningless, but instead prepared to receive the memories of the heritage right there. The celestial spirit great world's capacity to endure was far greater than before, and besides, his Taoist field of the beginningless itself was essentially a lifespan barrier, though it would catch the attention of people within the field. Guan closed his eyes, and the vast memories surged into his mind, giving him a sense of traveling through time. He experienced life from the Emperor of Eternal Life's first opening of the eyes. The Jinlan Immortal Mansion was bigger than he had imagined, completely its own independent world, and there were tens of thousands of such immortal mansions within the misty immortal court, with rankings among them. The Jinlan Immortal Mansion was considered a lower-ranked immortal mansion, but the birth of the immortal emperor's eye attracted many great powers. Through others' conversations, Guan learned that the immortal emperor's eye was not unique. Hence the misty immortal court did not associate the Emperor of Eternal Life with the stealing heaven emperor. Soon, misfortune began. The profound demon emperor attacked, seizing the opportunity to take the immortal emperor's eye during the escort to Ling Mountain. On the way, the parents of the Emperor of Eternal Life died one after another. These experiences did not stir Guan, as he had already gone through several lifespan reincarnations. However, through the Emperor of Eternal Life's perspective, Guan saw the magnificent expanse of the great Tao world, which broadened his vision. When he arrived at Ling Mountain, he too was shocked by it. The height of Ling Mountain was unimaginable, surrounded by many great heaven and earths, like stars, all of which seemed so minuscule in front of Ling Mountain. Even the nebulae in the universe were far less vast than Ling Mountain. The Buddha within Ling Mountain each had an extraordinary aura. Some even had golden bodies surpassing tens of thousands of feet in height. Guan also saw the celestial Buddha, and understanding the image of the celestial Buddha, he realized why he was able to rescue the Emperor of Eternal Life from the hands of the celestial court. Just one glance, and Guan could ascertain that the celestial Buddha exceeded the Tai Ching Golden Immortal Realm. After becoming a disciple, when the celestial Buddha was alone with the Emperor of Eternal Life, the imposing aura that overlooked all living beings was gone. He was like a kind monk, teaching the Emperor of Eternal Life how to cultivate and guiding him through confusions. In front of the Bodhi sacred tree, the Emperor of Eternal Life would forget his sufferings. The celestial Buddha let Guan see what a true Buddha should be like, possessing both the mighty power to shoulder the weight of all living beings and the compassion to care for the weakest.